Deb, would you please do the roll?
I shall. Jay Edwards.
Here.
Deb Janik, present. Tom Haley.
Here.
Ruth Hollenbach.
Present.
Jen Jocelyn.
Here.
Brendan McNally.
Present.
Jennifer Rashley.
Present.
Sherry Ackrey.
Present.
Mike Dakotas.
Present.
Joe Souza.
Present.
Tom Hamilton.
Not yet.
I think he's not here.
Okay, so when everybody probably noticed in the agenda that I put in here that we'll present and discuss in no particular order. And the reason I did that was so that people like Denise Surratt wouldn't have to be here for the whole meeting. I hope nobody has any problem with that.
No, that's fine.
So Chris Cotta, should we start with you and feed Denise in, or should we do it the other way around?
I don't think Denise needs to sit around and listen to me all night, so.
Okay, well, we'll start with Denise then. So Denise will probably be some fairly good news, better news about what happened for fiscal year 20. So without further ado, Denise, could you give us the good and the bad news?
Sure. As long as everyone hi, everybody. Can you hear me
Hi,
okay?
Denise. Yes.
Okay. So as long as we keep in mind that we are not done with fiscal year 20, it's only July 16th. So there's a couple of adjustments that we still need to make that can't be made until the end of August. There's a required adjustment that we make to our tax revenue that can't be made until we have all of the information for 60 days after June 30th. So, and that is an adjustment that can affect our revenue. So it's really hard to, normally I could kind of project, but this year, since we haven't even started collecting, I have nothing to project. So that's kind of holding things up. But anyway, since we last spoke, we picked up another $100,000 in gaming revenue. They did give us our fiscal year 20 sports betting revenue. I picked up about $30,000 after reconciling all of the police and fire detail from the last 3 months and from January to March for the casino detail before the casino closed. Let's see, we had $41,000 in impact fees to recognize, which is recognized as a reduction of expense. So it's not revenue, but reduced expense. So it has a positive effect on our bottom line. What else did we pick up? I think that's about it. So right now, in terms of revenue for fiscal year 20, most of the revenue that we lost has been backfilled by a few one-time, I don't want to call them windfalls. I mean, it was money that was due the town, but they happened in fiscal year 20. So it has mitigated the biggest loss that we suffered from the casino. We did receive our June school aid. We received about 70% of it. The other 30% we probably won't receive until hopefully the end of July. But the governor has backfilled that with some federal aid, but they are requiring the school department to make application before we receive those funds. However, I have accrued for those because I'm fairly confident that they're going to make good on it. So that is included in that number. So I'm hopeful, I guess the bottom line that really you folks want to hear is that I'm hopeful that the unreserved general fund that was budgeted for fiscal year 20, the 600,000, we will not have to use. I don't see anybody smiling.
I'm smiling.
I'm jumping up and
tremendously.
down. I'm taking notes so I don't
Okay.
miss this.
Well, I'm doing the same thing.
I do have a question. So this is for fiscal year 20. So it's really just it's really just making up for the losses that we had this year. So you're saying that 600,000 that's in the general fund is not money that was also budgeted, because I thought that they had decided to take some money out of the general fund to help cover the recycling center.
The funds for the recycling center were set aside from the industrial park fund, which is separate from the general fund. So those remain unspent, but those will not go to the general fund. They go back to their special revenue fund. So the 600,000 that was budgeted for fiscal year 20 to offset taxes, it looks like we will not have used any of that. So
Okay.
I guess the bottom line is, you're working with a little more of an unreserved general fund than you would have,
Right.
going into fiscal year 21.
A little bit better than just a little.
Well, I know we don't always like to use the general fund to offset taxes, but I'm sure that for 21, it's a given.
Could you
Go
either
ahead, Joe.
Denise or Sherry just explain that last part about the funds for the recycling center?
Okay, last year's budget,
The one we're at fiscal 20.
I'm sorry, fiscal year 20's budget included a $300,000 expense line item to be used towards for building the recycling center. The funds to cover that did not really come from taxation. The funds to cover that were going to be deducted from the fund reserve that we have set aside for the industrial park infrastructure.
Got it.
Okay.
How much of the general fund can be used? How far can it be drawn down?
Well, given what I've told you tonight, if everything else remained the same, you'd have about $1.6 million.
Above the 3%.
Above the 3%.
Question.
Yes, Joe. You need to unmute, Joe.
Just wondering how much of that money you're talking about is already in accounts, in the town's accounts? And how much are we waiting for from the state?
Right now, the only thing I'm waiting for from the state is the portion of the June school aid that was going to be replaced by federal funds for $194,599.
So we haven't received that part yet.
We have
So
not
we're
received that.
So we're not whole up to 600,000 then. We're still.
Well, yeah,
I mean, I understand you're saying that we expect it, but I always expect change. So just cross my fingers.
so am I.
Well, if I remember correctly, a short month or two ago, it was estimated at what, 1.3
What was?
available for use in the unrestricted reserve.
You have to forgive me, but I can't exactly remember. But just to give Joe a little more, well, I don't know if it'll give anybody a little more comfort, but everyone in the state, their state aid was cut by $41 million in total. And then that $41 million of the CARES money that the state of Rhode Island has was divided up among all of the municipalities. And based on their Title I calculation. So that's where they came up with that figure. So I'm hopeful, really hopeful that we're going to get it.
Okay. Any other, and you sent me, I don't know, I didn't have time to send it to anybody else, but Denise estimates for fiscal year 21 that the street lighting, which is
I think it's 80
line
now.
item 3380 on page 11, which was what, $100,000 is now going to be 70,000.
I had an opportunity to look at, it's really hard if you look at fiscal year 20 year-to-date streetlight number, because that is a combination of rebates and recalculation of, we got refunded money back to 2018, and then National Grid and Direct Energy, yes, I know, had to recalculate all of our charges. So you can't just look at that number and say, oh, that's all they spent this year. So I had to kind of look at it based on what I think it's going to be going forward. And we spend about, we have a guarantee with Prism. It's about $40,000, $38,000 a year for streetlight maintenance. And I think we're looking at about maybe $2,500 a month in electricity for streetlights. So the two of those together, I came up with, I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but 70. I don't think it'll go over 70. So that's a good
Well,
thing.
I trust your guess better than mine. Yes, Brendan.
So could we go back to, Denise had mentioned that there was $300,000 of expense that we anticipated in fiscal year 20 towards the recycling center. And the funds for that were going to come from the industrial park balance, correct?
Yes.
In the capital budget that we put together in our preliminary agreement, we had a number of $600,000 of capital expense that we were looking to fund. So was the total project 900, or was there some anticipation that of the $600,000, $300,000 of it would be coming from the industrial park fund?
I do not know the answer to that question, Brendan.
So I know with a lot of our considerations right now is thinking about what gap we have to close, is saying we wouldn't do any capital projects. Within that capital projects is a $600,000. It's probably the biggest one that we have next to paving. And I wasn't aware that there was another source that we might be looking at in terms of how to cover that. Okay, so that's helpful.
Chris, could you address that?
Let me see if I can take a stab at it, because even I have some difficulty with this one.
Me too.
My understanding is that on the 2020 budget, there was the $300,000 line item that was not appropriated by taxation, that did come over as a transfer from the industrial park fund.
Yes.
And my further understanding of that is, as we move to the 2021 budget and carried forward for 90 days, that carry forward still takes place. So there's $300,000 still sitting in 2021 now from the industrial park fund, because it's the same budget. What I don't know is how much of the 2021 budget was going to be earmarked by taxation. to make up the difference. So I don't know if you are intending on using a resolution to continue that reappropriation from the industrial park fund to the recycling center and making up the difference by taxation or by, I don't know what else is left in the industrial park fund and whether or not that's available to be used. That's a council question I'll have to ask.
There's 407,000 in the industrial park fund in total that has been set aside for infrastructure. So in a perfect world, if they had spent the 300, then you'd have 107 left. But at this point, I don't know what has been done. We have not, my office has not paid any bills
So
for.
we do have some bills from PAR, but I believe that we've been paying those with the recycling
Right,
account that we had
Yes.
is pretty much diminished now. And some monies from DPW has been paying for PAR. We paid the permitting fees to get in there with the freshwater wetlands. And I will tell you that while I can't give an answer today, I did have a meeting with DEM, our legal counsel, Public Works, and PAR about the landfill itself, about some sort of continuation of that. They heard what we had to say today. They need to evaluate that. They're going to talk to the staff and they'll get back to us on what they believe can and can't be done.
So they didn't reject it out of hand.
They rejected the resolution pretty much out of hand. It was the cooperative spirit of working together to try to find some resolution to mitigate some issues that we're having that might give us a slight, much smaller delay. When I say that they rejected the resolution out of hand, they pretty much intimated that they would have to if that was all they received, just based on the resolution. But we put it in context to them and they're going to go back to the staff and see what they can do. We made a presentation about trying to find some room to mitigate the capping process, to redo the slope of the crown and to fill in some areas, and they're going to go back to the staff to see if that's amenable. And they will get back to us with whatever it is that they deem appropriate. Part of the conditions, there'll be a number of conditions that come into play with that, of which I don't have any issues with, which would be probably starting the capping in the landfill early. So
When you say resolution, you talked about Donna Cook's resolution.
yes,
Okay. Okay.
it was a majority vote of the council, but
Yeah, I understand.
and I understand your position, but I also understand DEM's position.
Yeah.
So we're trying to find some middle ground in between.
Joe,
You're muted, Joe.
you're muted.
Mute.
Pain in the ass.
There you go.
Hey, you're on.
Resolve number one, if you look at resolve number one, that's the resolve that restricted that money for the sale of the industrial park, 25% for infrastructure. Just that resolve, just real quick, I'll just say that I hope our state reps are also doing something because I don't expect DEM to cooperate. We need legislation. We don't need DEM to change its mind. So, but I know that's not but it should go out there that to let our council should be asking our state reps to change that.
That resolution went to all the reps, Joe.
Yeah, well, I hope there's a piece of legislation that's going to be go in during budget time.
Well, we can hope. At least it's moving and it's not just stagnating.
No. Well, that 400 and change, if we don't put a resolve this year on the docket, then that money becomes unrestricted. So it just goes into the general fund. We've had to put the resolve each and every year
No, it doesn't.
to
It goes back to.
continue it because it's only an annual resolve. It
didn't
has to
come
be
out-
put
it
on every year.
Didn't come out of the general fund, Joe. It doesn't go back to the general fund.
Well, if we don't restrict it, it does.
No, it
Because
doesn't.
that's why we have to do it every single year. That's
Excuse
why
me,
we do it every single year.
The resolve,
Chris,
Don't put
excuse
it
me.
on this year. It won't be restricted.
if
the
we
reas-
do not renew the resolution, would the money
money
just
is
stay
not
in that
restricted.
account, but we could still use it? Is that correct?
It would just revert to the general fund.
I don't
Excuse
know
me.
about that.
That's the
Hello?
legal opinion we received back when we
Denise
started.
is trying to speak.
The resolve is, as it's been treated in my understanding, is only to restrict any sale proceeds for that given year. And it gives the council the ability to take the proceeds and put a minimum of 25% into the special revenue fund. So that is the resolve that they vote on every year. So the balance of the fund, once we put it in there, it becomes restricted to the industrial park. So the resolve just, we haven't had any sales, so the resolve doesn't mean anything for fiscal year 20. There was no sales. So the balance of the account stays whatever it is.
I'm reading the
But we
resolve,
could
so
choose
not gonna
then,
argue about it. I know what the legal interpretation was at the time. That's why we do it every year. But
You're right, Joe. We do it every year to restrict the proceeds from the sale of any land at the industrial park. So in 2016, we sold a piece of property. They voted to, I'm using an example, I don't know what years it was, but that year, if there was a sale, there was a portion of it that was restricted. That portion that gets restricted goes into an account and it's restricted. Then the following year, if they do the resolve and there happens to be a sale of property, then a portion of that sale proceeds goes into the restricted fund. So it allows us to build that fund until such time that they vote to use it.
well, then why would we have the language in the resolve that says shall be carried over into the same account fiscal year? I mean, we're carrying it over every year. That's that money that was already in the account. We're carrying over into the next year. So I don't know. I'm reading the resolve and I know what I was told by a solicitor. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
Okay.
okay, so Sherry,
Okay, so I that kind of answers to Denise. Part of one of the questions I had was I see that there were supposed to be, it looks like, proceeds from the sale of the library. So that you said that did not happen. We did not sell the library, correct?
What resolve is that?
No. I'm saying in the general fund, it says, I had a question. She was talking about that we didn't sell any properties this year. It looked like there was income that may have been revenue that was expected from the sale, the proceeds from the sale of the library for the general fund. I just was trying to see if that actually was sold.
So I think you just need to clarify.
Account 4995.
The library that refers to was the library on the Essex Library, the old building on Highland Road. And that sold a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And the council and I don't remember exactly the time frame. However, it was voted that the proceeds from the sale of the library would be used to help us pay the library debt service.
Okay.
So that's totally separate from the sale proceeds of anything that happens at the industrial park.
Okay.
and we did get that money and it was used for that purpose.
And we did get that money, and in fiscal year 20, we were able to take advantage of the proceeds of the library for 2 years. We used whatever came in, we divided it up over 2 years, and it helped to offset the library debt payment.
Okay, I was just curious as to why that was, why that was in the negative I wasn't sure what it was for. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions for Denise?
We didn't finish the street lighting, what it was. We had 100,000 for the budget, and we're a better estimate now is?
70.
70,000.
Great, thanks.
If for any reason you have any other questions, please, you can email me and I will get back to you as soon as I can.
And she's quick on doing that. Trust me. Okay, thank you, Denise. We
You're
appreciate your
welcome.
time.
All right, have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
So Chris, what's the bad or the good word?
So I don't know what you mean by that, but
What do you know that we don't?
well, that's a loaded question. I do know that, after, Denise's conversation with both you and I, and I know the general fund's in a better shape than what we thought it was in. And we still need to go through, I know we did a lot of work on revenues on the last meeting, and we needed to then start working on the expenditure side of the budget. So, I don't know much more than what you know at this point. I don't know where you want to start and where you want to head to. So I'm not sure if you're prompting me for something I should know and be telling you, or other than working together to try to get to the bottom of this, I don't have anything more to give you.
Well, okay. As everybody knows, Tom and myself, to some extent, have been working diligently on various budget scenarios, let's call it that. And those include, one of them was what we did back in April when we first took a stab in a preliminary approval of a budget, which at this time is useless. And then it just includes many things like to start zero casino revenue. What would happen what would the budget be if we got no casino revenue? Last meeting, we discussed in some detail what kind of percentages, which lead to dollar amounts, would we reasonably expect to be losing out of our revenue for various line items from the municipal budget. And what does that mean to the tax levy, which is ultimately what we're looking at, and particularly to the 4% cap, which we still have to live with. What would happen if we took out all the capital that we could? What would happen if we level funded the school? What would happen? On and on and on and on and on. There's so many different ways to look at this. So Tom and I have both, the approach I did was I took his tax levy worksheets, because when I plugged the number in, it changed throughout the whole document. So I didn't have to just keep on doing it and doing it and make all my silly mistakes. And from what I could see, and keep in mind, this was before what Denise told us, there might be as much as $1.6 million available in the reserve to use. I didn't know about a reduction in street lighting, all those kinds of things. I didn't know about, different revenue estimates coming up. So just from this weekend, the information I used is dated. It's, it's not useless, but it's just not accurate anymore. But unfortunately, it wasn't until I got to a point where I used our May 1st revenue estimates, our July 9th budget committee revenue estimates, removed all capital except for the recycling center, level fund the schools, and started feeding in more of the casino revenue estimate than I feel comfortable with, that I got even near 4%. And Tom, did you have the same experience?
Yes, indeed.
So, I mean, does anybody here think that we're going to get all the casino revenue? Yes or no?
No,
No,
Does
No,
anybody think
no,
we're going to get zero?
no.
So, so now we're bracketed between 0 and 100%.
well, I don't think we're going to be anywhere near 100.
No.
I think it's a mistake to try to, I mean, again, if you start feeding it back in and you don't have any idea, I mean, I get that what we just got is not something that we can even look at using because that's to backfill what the losses we already have. So I'm a little bit scared to, especially if we are really considering getting it out of the operational budget, it's a little bit worrisome to try to put it back in anywhere specific, not knowing.
The problem is the situation that we're in this year where you take it out completely, you can't get to the 4%. If you take it out absolutely completely, you can't get to 4%, even if you level fund everything that we need to level fund. So then we get into the situation of, do you go over the 4 cap and deal with that? Or do you, the other thing that, I don't want to do is I don't want to go below maintenance of effort because that creates another legal issue. Either way, we end up in a legal hole if we completely take it out.
And then,
Yeah, one of the things that, so I agree with all of the things that we've talked to date. The in our revenue estimates that we had back in May, and then with the information right now, we had put in $600,000 to draw from the general fund.
yes.
And so to me, one of the things that would seem like we could come to some agreement on is what level are we comfortable with in terms of drawing from the general fund. So Denise has said we could go up to 1.6 million above the 3% cap. I think Chris Cotta had mentioned in one of the prior meetings is that not being wise. I'll let Chris speak for himself, but to me, that is one thing that we have some level of confidence to say, here's this money, can and should we use it? That then helps. And it's significant, right? I mean, the difference between 600,000 and 1.6 million in terms of what gap we're trying to close. So to me, if we said all of it, half of it, some number of it, then helps us reduce some of the uncertainty of what we need to cut.
And keep in mind, some of the, at the end of the day, there are resolutions that govern what happens with the savings that we accrue for fiscal year 20. And those resolutions were effective for fiscal year 20, so we can't ignore them. So like some has to go in the paving account and those kinds of things. So that kinds of flavors what's really available. Mm-hmm. And so that, like Denise said, we won't know until August.
The other thing that got me in terms of the process that we were doing is that if additional money comes in, will we be precluded? Will we be stopped from spending it? So in other words, say for instance, we agree that we won't spend any money on capital projects or some percentage of it unless we get casino money. The casino money comes in and we have not approved a budget that includes it. Can we do it?
So you're saying set it by resolution?
I'm sorry, say that again, Chris?
Are you saying set it by resolution?
The answer, and I was kind of hoping that we might have the solicitor's opinion on this, is that my understanding, and it's not based on any legal, would be is we approve a budget, or we propose a budget, it gets approved by the voters, and that's all we have to spend. And if more money comes in for us, we don't have the authority to then increase the budget at a later date.
You're right, that's true. But you could set by resolution to, very similar to what the council is trying to do by ordinance, is kind of mirror that.
Mm-hmm.
So that, you have a resolution that adopts what that ordinance is. To the extent that any gaming revenue comes in, that it be restricted for some dedicated purpose and that it be prioritized somehow. I don't know how you get to what the item is, but
Okay, good. As long as we're on kind of that understanding that that's how we would do it, that makes sense to me. I'd be ashamed to not put it in a budget, not have a mechanism to do it if money came in.
Jay, I had a question on that.
I don't know who was first, but I saw Jen Joslin first. I'll
I
get
was
to you.
first. I was first, Jay. I was waving my hand.
Okay, fine.
So when I was along the same lines as Brendan, I agree to try to use some of the general fund money, but I had similar questions. If you can say, if the money comes in, then this, I don't know, we've never really done that before, have we? So you can say,
No.
if the money comes in, then it's restricted to this, or is that the solicitor opinion that we need, or do you know it's not possible?
we don't have a solicitor opinion on it yet. But it's something that I will address with him.
Thank
I
you.
do know that they are trying to do it by ordinance, which would make it a little bit more forceful or have a little bit more teeth to it, but I think a resolution would help as well. I think anything that, even a charter change would be that, but we're not there yet. We can't.
Chris, do we have the wording of the ordinance? Where can I see that? Is that online? Or
I
where's the-
believe it is online, I believe, because it
thank
was
you.
part of the last council meeting it was published in order for the councils to discuss, to vote to have a public hearing to have an ordinance.
Okay, thank
So
you.
that was part of the last council meeting backup, I think, which was online.
Yeah, and for those of you who watched that, the whole point of that discussion at that meeting was not to approve it or not necessarily to craft it, but to have a hearing on even being allowed to consider it.
Correct.
So
It wasn't
once we
forever.
have that hearing and we get whatever public input we get, keeping in mind that Zoom is not going to be the perfect platform for this. We'd all rather do it face to face in a room together, but we can't. And once they have that, then they'll craft a resolution, an ordinance, and away we go. And as I understand it, one of the purposes, if you will, of such an ordinance is, for one thing, it would be like immediate now or very soon. And it would it would compel us and anybody else who cared to develop their own budget to use the same guidelines. So in other words, we could not say, well, we're not going to spend any casino money because we haven't got it. And yet a petitioner could say, oh, yes, we are, because I think we're going to get it. Now you got these two hugely different budgets to present to voters. That's my opinion of what it is. And I've sent, I don't know, 6 or 7 questions to the solicitor around these things. And he got back to me and said, oh God, I've got to do a lot of research. So,
Right, because a petitioner is the same question. Can they put that in a petition that if we get the money, this will be where it should go?
well, in addition to an ordinance, like Chris said, I feel like we, the budget committee, and or the town council should also craft a resolution of what to do, which could include things like prioritizing where it's going to be spent. Who knows?
I don't believe a petitioner can craft a resolution for the FDR.
The petitioner can't. We can, and the town council can.
I don't know. I thought that there were petitioner resolutions
Yeah, they're
in
all,
the past. There
Sure.
have been.
they have been. You got to get signatures.
Oh, do you?
You can put a question on the ballot at the FDR.
Yeah,
Just like they would have to do for a petitioner's budget?
yeah.
So, bit of voter initiative. We're still a democracy in Tiverton.
An individual can do.
All right, so any other questions along these lines?
Well, I was just wondering, we're talking about if it comes in and, would it be better to put that on hold this year and if it does come in, go back into the general fund to replenish whatever we're going to draw on it, and then look at whatever else comes in addition to that, and then look at capital for next year? because, you know, you don't want to kind of end up in a what has and then go ahead and spend it. We don't even know when COVID or any of this is going to end, or what kind of other situations we may end up in financially due to the situation that we're in. So rather than plot it out and resolute it out to be assigned to something, why not let it, what comes in, go into the general fund to hold on for any other kind of emergency, and then next year we can decide if we want to budget it out for things that we weren't able to do this year.
I'm with Jennifer.
Joe?
From what I understand, that the U.S. Senate's coming back on July 20th, and they'll be in session until August 7th. So if there's going to be stimulus from the federal government, we'll know probably by August 7th what type of stimulus it is. I don't know if that's good news, but at least we'll know something by August 7th, I believe, what the feds are going to do.
Well, we'll know what they're going to do, but we won't know what the governor's going to do with that money.
And we're not going to know, like, we're looking at, you know, August 1st to try to get where we are. And then the other thing is even if that comes in, how much longer is this? You know, are we looking into all of fiscal 21? Are we going to be looking into fiscal 22, where we should be? This is why we ended up in the situation we were, because we put it 100% in the budget. And now we have to figure out how to deal with the loss. And then we're talking about, if it comes in, well, how should we spend it? Like, I think we should come from a side of, we have it, it's in the general fund. Next year, we can use it to budget over to capital or whatever we decide is the immediate need at that point.
Nobody decided
So
to
you would
attend from the school
advocate
committee?
you would advocate to not include casino revenue this year?
I'm not saying any percentage of it. I think we're in a catch-22 where we might have to use some portion of it and use some very conservative estimates and not come in with the spot, obviously, with 3 million. We might have to put something in there, because, you know, you put it all in, you're trying to take it all out in 1 year. We might still have to rely on that to get through fiscal 21. But I think we should be very conservative on that and start to work to back it out.
Well, the casino is really, really slow, so that would require the state to make up the majority of the 3 million, and I don't, you know, I'm not going to bank on that. So in my opinion, it should be zero.
There's a couple things. I mean, the casino is dependent on, you look at casino clientele, it's typically seniors. They're the highest get risk. And then you're asking them to go into a high touch place. There's kind of no fun with it. You can't sit next to the person you went with. You can't, you know, and it's also disposable income, which most people don't have right now. Yeah, you can't. That's the other thing. You know what, Joe? It's not a funny thing, but most people can't smoke anywhere in public, and you go in there, and that's the only, you know, public building that people, and they do. It's the only place you see it packed with smokers. But also, too, expendable income, or people tying it into an evening of dancing or food. All of that not possible right at the moment.
Well, the other thing we need to consider here too is, from our point of view and from the taxpayer's point of view, which in the end is the least harmful option. Now, if we start feeding in a lot of casino revenue and it does not materialize, then we could very easily have to have another FTR, which costs money. We would have to do a new tax bill, which would cost more money. And we would have to whack people on the side of the head with an increase. Whereas if you do it up front, like now, it's not palatable, but it doesn't choke you. If you know what I mean. You know, I'd much rather find out up front than 6 months down the road find out, oh my God, you know, we guessed wrong and look what's going to happen. Ruth, were you
No, I think Sherry.
or Sherry, one of you?
Yeah, I just, what I was gonna say is that, it's, it's very difficult because this is what the last couple of years when I've talked about us doing our budget process backwards and needing to look at the revenue first before we budget for an item and figuring out what our revenue is and then spending from what we actually get. I understand that we have, that if we don't try to put something in, we don't get to where we need to be without taking away what we don't have already. But I just don't know. It's just like I said before, it's really scary to try to guess at what, and that's why I was wondering if maybe Chris has any thoughts on, whether if he was going to make an assumption of a percentage to get us to where we need to be, what kind of percentage would he think?
On gaming revenue?
Yeah, on gaming revenue.
So I can only go by experience, and obviously the first 8 months of last year are something you can use as a guide, but you have to take it in context. It was thriving as far as the casino went. It was never going to make the $3 million. So if it stayed open all year, the state would have had to kick in something for a guarantee. It generated we'll say now 1.3 million because we get that money for the sports betting. It is now generating, I think we made $30,000 for the first month. I would expect, being at the level that they're at over the summer, it'll be very minute amount of money that comes in. It'll be very similar to the last 3 months of 2020. And when it does reopen fully, if it ever reopen fully, I don't believe it will be thriving like it was. I would suspect that $500,000 to $600,000 would be the maximum amount that we would see generated in revenue from that facility. And that's considering if it doesn't close. If it closes down again, I think, people are not, like you said, they're not willing and able to go out and spend their disposable monies on things right now when so many other things are closed down and they're struggling trying to pay their bills. And, they're with 17 to 20% unemployment out there. Now that I know our numbers changed a little bit for this past month, I think we're at 13% for the state. In Mass is a little bit different, but the disposable income is just not there. It is your core people who are going to show up there. And like you said, you can't sit next to your friend. It's kind of isolated. It's even they recognize that it's not generating the kind of monies that they need to continue to keep it sustainable.
Well, and I guess they also don't know if things are going to go back, if things are going to get worse in the fall, if the outbreak. Okay.
So I would not project anywhere near even the 1.2 million that we generated last year, or 1.3 million. It's just is nowhere near going to be as thriving as it was for the first 8 months of last year.
So what about like 200 to 300,000, something like that, like half of what? I mean, like I said, it's a really hard thing to guess at with it being so volatile.
Chris, can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead,
As
Jen.
we're having this conversation, would it be better to back off thinking about including casino cash and look at what Denise said to us was available through the general fund and try to use that? And then if the casino money came in, that would fill back what we took out.
So
would that be a safer bet?
I would say yes. My only caution to it is, and obviously it's a very, very difficult year. So, and if I was in your shoes, I would probably be looking at this very same thing. The problem with using the general fund reserve to any amount over and above what you would normally use, it creates a structural deficit, because I don't know if that money is going to be there the following year. So, it's the same, it's the shell game. So, but at least you have that money. I mean, we don't know we have casino money. So
well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think the shell, I don't think we have a choice, but I don't like the shell game. I never liked the shell game when we play that, but I don't think we have a choice this year to get into that 4% and to get, so I think we have to play it cautiously one more year, but also keep in mind when we come back to this table to get away from it next year.
I'm not disagreeing. I just think you really have to consider it, at least to the level that you get. If you get up over $1 million of taking out of the general fund, you really have to start looking at how you're going to replace that revenue stream for the following year's budget, because you just created the same thing.
But why
So,
don't we look at it
but
like,
it does get you through a hole. It does get you,
why don't we look at it where we start off plugging it in at a conservative amount and see where we need to plug to get where we need to go? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if we were already gonna spend 600,000, if we bumped it to 8, do we get closer to where we need to go if we bump it to 850, and then we know what we need to use?
okay. But I would also, say something, that we were talking about earlier about this, landfill, the recycling center. I'm a little bit confused as to why there's $600,000 in the budget for it, because my understanding is it was only going to cost about $500,000 to do this project. And if we
Exactly.
if we had 300,000 set aside, we'd really only be looking at another 200 to 300,000. So
And that's a huge expense.
it is. So I think we need to get a little bit more clarity on that, which I can help, I'll talk to the council members about that, why that was put in that way. And can we, because I'm also looking at the results from last year, and I don't know how that 300,000 came about for FY20. There's no resolve in there that says take 300,000 out of the reserved account for the landfill. I mean, for
It
the.
wasn't a resolve.
So how was it? Was it just done by vote of the council?
No, yeah, see, here, my memory may be faulty, but initially, if I remember right, the presentation that Pear first made said it was going to cost $500,000.
Yep.
And then we had that big meeting and they floated several different balloons. One of them was very costly because it required a ton of infrastructure. But it was always the plan to use some of that infrastructure money, which we can legally use within the terms of the resolution for roads and all that. It doesn't say it has to be for somebody that bought something. It just
Okay.
said roads and infrastructure. So I think initially we said something like 150 grand,
Okay.
something like that. So yeah, we can use any or all of that for infrastructure, but not for the recycling center
No,
itself.
it's only for the access to get to that site. So
And water and electricity and the road and all that kind of crap. So that's, if I remember correctly, and anybody knows, correct me if I'm wrong on that. However, the price of the landfill or of the recycling center has probably increased a bit.
Okay.
I think the permitting got a little tangled and didn't we?
Permitting went up for a different reason altogether, but that's
A different reason, but it went up.
I will say that we also, the cost of the recycling center did not go up. It actually went down because I went through it and we cut out
Okay.
a lot of things that didn't need to be done. And we got relief on a couple of things, but so I think we dropped about 125,000 out of the original $600,000 estimate. And I thought there was like 150,000, like you said, to be used for road improvements that was coming out of the industrial park fund, which I did know that, but I couldn't figure out where the 300,000 came from that was in the budget. That's for 2020.
I'm not quite clear on that myself, but let me make a point here about what Jennifer or what Jen Joslin was talking about. 25% of the 3.1 million, we'll call it guarantee for lack of a better word, is $775,000. So looking at that, if you want to look at it this way, we have 50% of lost casino revenue sitting in the general fund, roughly. But I'm with Chris on this. We need to keep a cushion because we don't know what's going to happen. So we don't want to spend it all. And I think what Jennifer was trying to say is, well, we use some of it. And then if money does dribble in from the state or the feds, or wherever the hell it comes from, it's going to go there eventually. And it'll sort of build it back up and replenish it. and it
Mhm.
will be available for next year. The only thing is, we don't know how much or when.
But I think that's better at trying to guess. And then I just had a quick question for Chris. Sorry, I had my hand up.
I know.
Chris, can I ask about the recycling center as we're planning the budget process too, and then you're asking the state for an extension to try to figure that out?
Yeah.
Is it better for us to fully budget for it, and can't they come back and them say, well, you have the money to do it, or
So
should we take?
we had a discussion today about and if you're talking about the closure of the recycling center, they're two different things, but we talked about the closure and the capping in the landfill. And while that's going to be done, according to my understanding of it, there's a phased plan of doing it. It's kind of like a 2.5-year phasing, that we would be able to start capping that landfill in pieces, especially over the areas that need it the most right now. But still might be able to, and this was a question we raised today. We didn't get an affirmative answer on it until they talked to their staff about it, but I asked if it was a potential, could we continue utilizing the recycling center that's at the top of the landfill now and defer the issue that we have because of our budgetary issues? And they thought it was a novel and unique idea, and they were going to discuss it. They weren't at all, should I say, negative about it. The issue is, I believe that they really want us to begin the process of closing the landfill. So they want to see us start to cap it. I'm not opposed to doing that. If it gives us some relief on building the recycling center, at least for a temporary short period of time into FY 2022. And if it gives us if they can help us with the crowning of it on how we put the cap on it, that gives us at least maybe into, part of 2022. That's less money that we would have to pay for our tipping fees and for our additional transportation to get to Johnston. So they're trying to understand where we are financially. I gave them a full picture on where we were, where our issues were, how it was caused. And obviously it's no fault of anybody's. It is what it is. But we are struggling probably worse than any other community in the state right now because of the gaming issue. And it was not lost on them. So I think they'll be somewhat receptive. I just don't know what they'll ultimately grant relief to. I believe that we will probably not have to do the recycling center. At least that's my hope, the way that we discussed it, at least for a little while. It will ultimately have to get done, but it may not have to be done in 2021.
Ruth?
Just a question on, so if we know eventually what the schools are willing to come down to, well, that will help us also, correct?
Yes.
That's point, whatever they give up, we will be able to use. That's one thing we still don't totally know yet, apparently, from
We
all
don't, and I will say the good news I did hear from the congressional leaders was that first and foremost is they are trying to put a very large, I think it's 100 billion, which may not be enough for every school, but it's all related to opening, social distancing, all the things related to COVID, that they would come up with a funding mechanism to help augment that, which would be very helpful because the schools are going to have issues. I'm not disagreeing with that. But it would be nice if they came. I'd rather see them come up with the money for that than to fill a hole that we don't need.
I'm not quite done, Deb. So that would be from state money?
Federal money.
Federal, they're looking to the feds to help with that.
The
Okay.
feds
That'll
have
come to the
intimated that that's
state,
coming.
correct?
Right, okay. So that part we can all discuss. I'm sure we'll discuss. But on the other thing that you were talking about, the casino opening and how much we're going to be getting, I know everyone doesn't want to have zero. It doesn't think zero is correct. What is going on with Twin River, Chris? Because I see here they have 3,400 people limit and Tiverton's 900. That's now?
It is. That's what the invites are. But in actuality, because we've had our fire marshal take a look at this, it was a question that we had raised immediately as soon as that came out. The seating capacity or the lights on machines is 540. So that's the max that they can have in the facility, including the restaurants. There are only two restaurants and they're minimal. But the only machines that are available and all the seats in the restaurant that are available are 540. They do not encourage people to be lingering or waiting around. You can't do that in that facility. So the maximum is 540.
And so
The square footage on
Twin River-
Tiverton's
Twin-
way lot
Twin-
lower.
Twin Rivers stopped people from smoking also, it said. It's kind of
They
interesting.
did, which I would hope that they would continue well after, because I think they could have a much more viable business.
It's not good for respiratory.
Well,
But, yeah.
there are far more non-smokers today than there are smokers. So I think the business model would be better for them.
Yeah, so I'm just curious if everybody takes that into account, we could somehow look and see if we can have some casino money number. And then what other people are saying is then get some from the general fund and backfill it later. All of that, if we can use different scenarios on your sheets, Jay and Tom and Jay.
Oh, I have, believe me.
I
I
don't know.
just haven't got the new number for
Yeah.
what's liable to be in the reserve.
Can you send something out, or we have to wait till next week to see that?
Nope. What I'm going to do is you've seen Tom's spreadsheet. So on the right-hand side, he's got a lot of stuff like this is a 2% increase and all that.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't change when the numbers change. So before I send it out, I got to do something about that.
And I know Jen and Joe both had their,
But this is only going to be as good as what I sort of know or don't know. So you just have to take it all with a grain of salt. Joe?
Well, I just want to point out, because I think there seems to be a big rush to close our landfill. I just tell you, first off, I've been doing a lot of reading about Superfund sites, landfills, construction of landfills, closure of landfills, putting solar panels on landfills, and I'll go with solar panels. We actually looked at putting solar panels up there, and they told us that you can't put solar panels on a landfill for 10 years because it keeps settling. All right, and
Joe,
you also
can
have
I
engineers
interrupt you,
telling you
please?
that you can't close a landfill until it settles.
Listen,
So-
Joe, can I interrupt you, please?
Well, no, because
We're
getting
not
ready
here to
vote
talk
on it.
about this
is relevant
policy.
information before we vote to spend money.
Look, the policy's been made. We can't change it.
We
Our
can- we cannot
responsibility
fund
is
it.
to look at funding, please.
Well, then maybe we shouldn't fund it.
You can vote that way, Deb Janik.
Well, I'm trying to, if you don't want to hear this stuff, I'm sorry.
Not,
But I think
not
the
at this
public should
time.
know. And this is a public meeting, and I was elected, and I would like a moment to speak and
You
finish what I
have
was
spoken
saying.
about this before. We do not make this decision.
Yes, we do. We make a
No, we
decision
don't.
what to put on. Yeah, well, when it comes
Deb.
time to spend the money, it's the voters' decision.
Deb Janik.
So,
Totally different. I just want to make everyone aware that we are the budget committee, yes. But we represent everything, and it's municipal and school. And I just don't want to get into a us and a them. It's a whole budget. It's the town budget. So we need to figure out as a whole and not to say it's us versus them, because although we don't do every line on the schools, we're still responsible for the school budget and the municipal side. It
I agree.
equals the town budget. So just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Just so everybody knows, I spoke to Dr. Sanchioni today and Dr. Larkin today. The school committee's having a meeting on the 10th, or this Monday, whatever that day is. They didn't want to meet with us until after that meeting. They would like to meet with us at our next meeting. They wanted to know if we could accommodate them at 7 o'clock. We could start our meeting and then they could join us, or we could just start at 7 and all be together. So do we have a consensus on how we'd like to approach that?
What day was that? The day we already have our meetings?
We would
scheduled for,
have our
Jay?
meeting next Thursday. They're having one this coming Monday.
That would give us a full hour before they come in if we begin at 6.
Yeah, they
We could do
join-
that, yes.
We could set it up as a webinar. They can join in.
Yeah, they could join in. That's not a problem. And they don't think they would have more than maybe 2 or 3 people there, so it would not be a quorum or any of that. We wouldn't be making any decisions. We'd just be
Discuss.
getting input.
So that'd be July 20th.
July 23rd is our meeting,
Is that,
right? Your
is
meeting?
that the 20th?
No, they're meeting the 20th. We would meet the 23rd.
Correct.
Yes.
Question,
Yes, Joe.
have they been advised of the new revenue numbers that we're coming from?
Not by me.
You're muted,
You're-
Joe.
You're muted, Joe. There you
They
go.
should be advised that the numbers we're looking at right now. That's,
Well, I imagine they're going to have them on Monday. I think that's one of the things why they didn't want to meet with us tonight, because they're going to get some of that stuff. But you're right, and I'll take that for action.
well, I would hope, and I said before that they're gonna be responsible, and make the cuts and don't make us do it. That's my point, because, or make a budget that, you know, a petitioner puts in, make the cuts.
And one of the things, I don't know if anybody watched the latest school committee meeting, but if you did, you're aware that their transportation
Oh, yeah. That's right.
costs have mushroomed by 15%. We're dealing with a monopoly in the transportation company, and they are not happy. But as Dr. Sanchioni said, the only decision we can make is to do it. We may have, we're going to have to transport kids. Jen Joslin?
Chris.
No? Anybody raising their hand?
Yeah,
Jen?
Ashley. Chris, is there any way that municipalities can contest to the governor, the bus company raising that number? Because it seems like my bet would be that there would be a rush of parents to deliver their kids to school if it opens, and that instead of needing more buses, there will be a lack of students riding buses anyway, and not a need to
So
increase.
I don't
vehicle
believe
numbers.
that that the school department can, not that they, obviously, I know that they would, if push come to shove, they would ask, but the issue boils down to is, what about the kids who don't have parents to take them there, and they still have to commit to have busing go around the community to pick up kids who don't have, transportation. So, the whole issue of, whether or not they can complain to somebody in the state, I don't know. That's, it's a bidding issue that, there is very few competitive people out there to bid against it. Whether or not they orchestrate their bids, as it's been suggested, so that, certain ones take care of certain towns and the others take care of the other towns. It's, they could complain to the Attorney General for the Consumer Division, but I'm not sure there's any relief, and anything that you would see anytime soon. It would probably have to be, some sort of action taken, and litigation would take place, but it's pretty much a sole source entity. There's not a lot of bus companies out there that have the infrastructure and the resources to bid, competitively bid against every town. It's so, I can understand the predicament that they're in. It's kind of like health insurance. It's, where we all have those same issues too. It's very, very difficult to deal with this. I would, I don't know if they want to commit to a 5-year deal, if they should go back out and redo it, but that's their decision to make. It's not the budget committee's, it's not mine.
Okay.
I feel bad, I feel awful for them. I just don't know what the relief is for them to try to get it rectified. They should talk to their state legislators and see if there's something they could do about it. And I just don't know what they would do. Like I said, there's not another bunch of companies out there that can provide these services. I mean, unless they went out and bought their own buses and their own drivers, which we all used to do many years ago, but it became.
Yeah, and they
so
changed to
prohibitive.
private, thought it was gonna be cheaper. Now
It
look
wasn't.
at it. The legislature got involved in a lot of this too, so you can blame your legislature for a lot of the mandates, like monitors.
Jen, Jocelyn, what were you gonna say?
So I just wanted to share a little bit from the busing from the school side. Mike and I both sat on, they welcomed parents and educators to a reopening committee a couple of weeks ago, which Mike and I participated in, and they touched on some of the busing. So the one issue that we have is they put it out to bid and only first student responded. So they have no competing bids to go between. In addition, let me just pretext this with, I don't agree with 15%. First Student tried the same thing almost 3 years ago with the exact same percentage of 15%. And at the time, they were in a different position to refuse it. However, what we're kind of looking at as parents returning to school, if we're in fact able to return to school, is the first thing is we can only get, I think it was 14 or 15 buses. They won't be adding any more buses to the thing because of COVID. There's no additional forms of transportation. So then you look at that, and what the school committee started with was the elementary schools, they expanded the walker zone. So more children from a little bit of a further distance would walk to the elementary schools, and that would take some children off the bus. Because currently, due to CDC guidelines and ride guidelines, no more than 25 students can ride a bus, so it's one kid per seat unless there's a sibling on the bus. Some of our buses come in with 70 to 75 students on them from some of the areas. So you're already going to ask parents. What they've asked parents to do is to try to carpool. The elementary schools are not so much of an issue with parents pitching in, them expanding the walker zone, and the same thing with the high school, because when they get to the high school, some parents drop off, some kids drive, which alleviates the amount of riders on it. Where they're having the biggest issue is the middle school. And the issue with the middle school is there is no walker zone there, and there's no way to get kids in safely unless it's by a bus or by a car. And even if all parents wanted to transport kids, they don't even want parents to transport one kid at a time, because the backup that you would put on Boogamarsh at that time would be ridiculous. So one conversation was possibly bringing 2 grades in, like 7th and 8th, put them on the high school bus, and then they would be able to stagger the school day where they would come into, it also helps getting them into the building and screened as well. Because this is another side on the bus. If a child comes in on a bus, they're going to be screened at the bus stop. They're going to have their temperature taken. They're going to be asked a couple of questions whether they can board. If they come in with a parent, someone needs to be on the sidewalk doing the same thing, because it's just like when you go to work and you get screened, they can't come out if their temperature is over a certain amount. So there's a whole logistic of trying to get, at the middle school, 660 kids into the building a day on side of the buses. So I think one of the things when we talk about COVID is everyone's been impacted by COVID, but the schools are going to have the most logistics and the most amount of people to try to figure out how to get in, out, and operate safely. And that's if we go back. I mean, they had to put in 3 different plans. And at some point during the school year, we may be in all 3 plans.
Janet.
Just a question for Jen. Who does the testing? Who's going to be are they doing temps?
So the testing, the screening, the bus monitors would be responsible to screen at a bus stop, which also means that parents will, especially for younger kids, because like the older kids might go to the bus stop by themselves, but for younger kids, someone would have to be with them, because if they get rejected, they need to be able to go home with an adult. They can't board. And then at the school, the percentage of walkers that come in will have to be screened before they enter the building. And that's another piece, when we talk about CARES money and additional things, I think the things that those types of funds are going to go to is not their operating budget. It's going to be like thermometers, PPE, dividers, the stickers for the floor, dividers on the lunch tables. Those are going to be the kind of things that we need to learn to operate for a huge amount. I mean, you're talking about, 280 people in an elementary school, 600 plus, and none of the other municipalities have these kind of people and the amount of people in the building. And then they have to have isolation rooms too, because if someone does start to show signs, they have to be able to isolate that person until they can get picked up and removed from the building. There's, that, and then the additional cleaning.
Who made all those rules, Jen?
CDC, RIDE.
And
And then, of course, the other thing that's happened is, and it happened in the town hall, and Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, I think these plexiglass screens were like $300 a pop. And how many are they going to need in the school?
Jay, can I interrupt? Because I was part of a conversation with a PTO board today about this, because, we're trying to see if funding doesn't come in, how do we purchase these? For the elementary schools, they're about $37 a piece
Oh,
for
wow.
those desks.
Hmm.
But again, you're going to face, we're trying to figure out if, how we fund those, if we, where that comes from. And also too, the demand, every school district is trying to purchase all of these items at the same time, just like hospitals were trying to buy PPE. So, I mean, there is some conversation, but we're obviously waiting to see too what happens with federal funding and state funding. And then, parents are always willing to help out where we can,
Jen?
And of course, the bus issue, the other part of that issue is you have to have the buses you need in case of an evacuation to evacuate those who rode. Now, I don't think that includes the drivers, and it may not include the walkers, but it certainly will include all the people that were bused there.
Well, from emergency procedures that we've been explained as parents prior to COVID, it does, if they have to evacuate that building, like if there's that kind of emergency where everyone has to get out, they just put the kids on the bus and they go to a designated area that would become a parent pickup zone. Like they don't wait for, if there's a fire or God forbid something else, that they have to get those kids out of that building. They get that kid out of the building, they're put on buses, and then they're taken to a separate location where parents can pick up.
COVID-19 notwithstanding.
Notwithstanding, that would be, I would honestly think that it would be an exception to the COVID provision. I mean, if you had a fire, you had something, you had to get those kids off that property, I think that would exclude the situation.
Jen, how many changes have been going on with the CDC rules and the ride rules throughout this time period? Have they gotten more strict or less strict over time? And what's the history, just briefly, please?
So from what I understand about the CDC guidelines is the CDC put out guidelines for schools. They were then sent to RIDE, and then RIDE instructed schools to come up with 3 different plans for operation that needed to be submitted by tomorrow. And those 3 different, and they had to use those CDC guidelines in those plans. So
Okay.
one would be we're fully back in person, where obviously all that PPE and distancing is going to come in. One would be a hybrid version of distance learning and being home. And the third would be us being completely home, and how they make that different than it was before, more emulate the school day.
Okay, can I just comment? Thank you for that great information. I mean, we've heard a lot about the age differences and who's affected by this virus. And I just want us to be thinking a little outside the box of the CDC, because they have been wrong numerous times in the past. So just let's keep that in mind. Of course, we want to protect the kids and all their relatives and all of that. I understand. And you've got the plans coming up, which Jen said, that's great. But it's possible, is it not, that the CDC could relax some of this by the start of school? That's possible. I'm not saying it's going to. I'm just saying possible. And then I wanted to mention one other thing, that aside from the school issues, which I know we're all going to be discussing, it's not us versus them. No one ever said, I don't think in this group, that was anything in anyone's mind about town versus school. We're all trying to do the best for all of them, but we do need to be reminded that over the last few years, especially last year and just recently, but over quite a few years, fire department, police department, and DPW have put aside a lot of their needs. They've had issues, with the ice, the falling, sliding down with not the correct equipment. They've had things break. Right now, I know that they had a couple of breaks on the street side grass mower. I don't know what it's called. And the police department has great plans for their new technology, and they've saved a lot of money in cars and other forms of, and been very patient. So I'm trying to say, and Chris, you can chime in because I know you understand this more, but the town has been very patient. I just want to put that out there as something to keep in our minds. Thank you.
So Ruth, just to kind of respond to you about the CDC guidelines.
Yeah.
So last week, the president asked the CDC to roll back on that because he said there were issues with it and it was way too strict. And the CDC said they would not change it at his request. So Currently, that is what the guideline that we have had to submit the reopening plans.
Okay, good luck with the CDC.
So based on what we've been trying to do here is that's part of the, I'll just keep on using the word worst case. We assume then that the CDC is not going to relax. They may in fact get more strict. They may just stay where they are, but it would be imprudent for us to assume that they're going to get easier and it'll cost us less in the long run. Joe?
Well, CDC does not issue mandates, they issue guidelines. And they rely on the communities to interpret those guidelines based on the need. The city of Pawtucket, Central Falls, I mean, that's where all the numbers are, the heavy COVID numbers. You know, Tiverton is not seeing the type of, so I don't, I know we want to, protect the kids, but me personally, I can't fathom seeing kids walking around in, elementary school wearing masks or face shields and then expecting the town to pay for that. I mean, if you look at the European examples, what's been going on in Europe, which I've been doing a lot of reading about, they sent their kids back to school when we left our kids out, and they're not seeing any rise in COVID. I'd ask people to go and read some about that. PBS had a really good article about it. So, I don't want the school committee to come to me and say, oh, we have to have all this gear, blah, blah, we need more money, blah, blah, blah. Come on, let's be realistic. The numbers are not there in Tiverton that we need kids walking around in plastic shields everywhere and things like that. Let's use the science that's out there. Let's not, get crazy on this.
Joe, could you send out a few links to the group? Is that okay, Jay, if he sends out links on the information on that?
Any of you can share any information
Okay.
you so choose.
If you'd like
The only issue I have with that statement, Joe, is yes, the CDC establishes and recommends guidelines, but the governor has and does have the authority to mandate them, and she has.
I'm sorry, she doesn't have any ability to mandate either. Her health department can make recommendations unless it showed a public hazard. And there's some question whether her ability, the governor's still there. I'm not sure, I just listened into former
Tiverton is
Supreme
on the
Court
website.
Justice Flanders on that.
As we
issue
sit
with
here
this-
right now, we do have a mandate. We do have a governor that tells us what it is, and it's really not an option.
The other issue I'd
Yeah.
like to bring up too is we can go tit for tat about what the rules are with masks and things like that. But RIDE does override the school department and does give the guidelines. If RIDE says we cannot reopen without these items, we cannot reopen by these items. We are mandated by the Rhode Island Department of Education. And
Even
we have to
RIDE
follow.
asked you to give them 3 plans. They didn't say anything about how you had to do it. They gave basic guidelines as
Joe,
reference,
Please
but
stop
they made
arguing.
you come up with the
Yeah,
plan.
I'm not going to argue with you. They had to
Well,
submit
you
3
just told me
plans
that you
and they
submitted
had
3
to follow
plans.
Okay,
CDC
let's
guidelines in order to submit those.
let's not get into a pissing contest over this. Chris?
I just, we went through a lot of this last week where we made some very, very difficult cuts on revenue. And I made a comment at the end of the meeting, which was totally inappropriate, and it was a reflection against the schools. I agree. We all need to do our share. All right. But we're talking about things that we don't have control over.
Right.
You can make a recommendation based on your feelings, on your intuition, on what it is that you want to do. But to sit here and discuss what CDC is doing, what RIDE's doing, what other people are doing, totally out of our control is just inappropriate at this point. Let's just talk about the budget issues, the budget numbers, and whatever comfort level we have of representing what we can do on behalf of the taxpayer is fine. But we're getting nowhere really fast talking about things none of us have any control over. And it's just, to me, I get that your points, but it's, we're spinning our wheels going nowhere.
Well, we have new information, Chris, and we need to see the sheets with the new info on it, so we don't have, everything we need to talk about it.
Well, but the schools are going to have to
Particularly when we're being told to spend money.
They need,
because of these recommendations.
Okay.
They're telling us, you got to do it. You got to do it. And I'm not sure that we're being told that we have to do the things they're doing.
Well, I just think it's fair if we put down the
Irregardless,
numbers.
our goal and our job is to produce and recommend the best budget we can to the voters. That's our sole purpose. We don't set policy. We don't force policy. The budget is not a weapon. So it's like Chris said, well, let's just focus on the budget. You know, we can accept things that will affect that.
We're going to set a school budget and we're making a recommendation. So yes, we do affect policy in the end because, you know, it's our recommendation that funds these policies.
True, we recommend a budget, the voters approve it, and then the various entities have to make it work.
Sherry was asking a question.
I'm sorry, Sherry.
Not really asking a question. I just think that it's not, yes, you're right, Joe. We set the budget for the school, but my husband's a teacher, not at a public school, but the state is mandating a lot of this stuff. And I think it's going to be the school committee's job to say, you guys are mandating that we need to meet these things and go back and try to figure out, you know, if the state's going to mandate that they meet certain criteria and have to spend all this extra money, then it's going to be, you know, then someone's going to have to go back to the state. I just, like we were saying, it's not, I don't think that that's something that that extra cost that is going to be because of COVID, I don't think that's something that we can consider right now since we don't know, you know, all of the specifics for that. That's all.
Okay. So did you want to start going through the town side of the budget to see where we can start to make some cuts?
Well, I made a list, and I bet you've made a list.
Before we do that, I have a question about the revenue, and I can't remember if we talked about this last week. But did we talk about the municipal and the probate courts?
We did not.
Are they in session?
So municipal, I believe, has not been, but there'll be a point in time when they do catch up. And probate has been working all along, doing emergency issues and collecting the fees on behalf of probate. So the fees have been coming in, but not all of the work can be done, although they have just started in the last, I think the last meetings they had were in person in the town hall doing full probates. So,
Okay.
so
we
they
can
are operational.
we can leave the
It's,
full,
municipal court is the one that has not been operational. But ultimately, all those tickets and municipal charges that we've issued, you know, the fines, they'll come before the municipal court. Even if there's a catch-up period, we will get that caught up.
okay, because it was like $20,000 and $30,000 respectively, and
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we weren't overlooking it, and I didn't remember talking about it.
No, we did
Okay.
not talk about them, but historically, they've pretty much come in on target. So,
Okay, and I know they have, I just didn't know with the courts being closed, if we actually had sessions.
we have not had municipal court sessions, but I believe that we're going to start, I don't know if it's at the end of phase 3 where we'll be doing that. But probate obviously has to, we've been doing at least everything that we can with emergency measures and, you know, guardianship appointments and those kind of things.
Okay,
But probate, you know, people die. We still have the probate issues coming in with the fee structures that come with it. So it's just a matter of having the main hearing of, you know, whatever it is they do, where they, you know, finally do a disbursement of, or agree to do the final disbursement of the probates.
all right.
And we did sort of,
Thank you.
we did discuss.
I mean, they fall under departmental revenues, I believe, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, we discussed, you know, what, you know, if we removed all the capital that we could, that came to like $609,000.
Oh. What did we leave in?
Bear with me.
Because it was 324 plus 885, I thought.
We left in
The 229, which was the time payments.
We took out,
Got the time payments.
okay, on
Yeah.
municipal capital restricted pages 2 and 3, the total came to, the first one came to 324,000, and we just removed that, but then there was discussion. No, okay. Then capital improvements,
The 885.
we didn't take out the recycling center, so that would have been like 225,000 out of that.
Okay, I thought we took out everything, so,
Well, we didn't want to take out the recycling center because we don't know that we can.
okay.
I mean, if they came out tomorrow and said, no, you don't have to build it, that'd be one thing. But we can't count on that. We better be ready in case.
That's, just so you know, that's
Jay?
from what Tom modeled and our collective understanding.
Yeah, and then the recurring major time finance payments, we have to stay with that.
Right.
So that came to, yeah. Hang on. Ultimately, I come up with a capital expense allocation of 829,146. Am I close?
So I would say you'd be able to reduce that, because if we were taking monies, and I think we had 150 coming out of the, so you could probably drop that down to 450 on the
Think so?
recycling.
Recycling center goes from 600 to 450, is that correct?
Yeah, because if we're gonna use 150 out of the industrial park fund to do the road.
Okay.
So take another 150 out.
Yep.
I'm writing. Okay, then now we start getting into some of the operational stuff. I talked to Denise, we're on page, if you go to page 7 and you get to the OPEB trust. I talked to Denise Surratt about that, and she would not be entirely opposed to
Page one?
chopping that, but I don't know if we want to.
What page is it?
7 at the bottom.
7, new OPEB trust. Am I on the right page?
I have, my page 7 is probate.
Okay, hang on. I guess it depends on what version you're looking at. Well, it's my, okay, so if you find pension plans, tax
I
sale
find
insurance,
it now. It's okay.
new OPEB trust is $100,000.
So just, so you know, with that, that's just kicking the can down the road, but that's,
I know it,
okay.
but it's not something we're required to do.
Nope.
So if we absolutely had to, we
Oh.
could,
Well,
but doesn't mean I want
right. We're not required yet, but we will be.
to.
We could at least reduce part of it.
We could.
I was going to suggest the same thing. What if we made a good faith contribution, but we reduced it to either 25 or 50?
So we could reach a consensus on what we think that would be.
So I would, if you're gonna, okay, that's,
No, Chris, I mean, if we're making a bad move there, like,
We should be putting more in.
I would just,
well,
put-
yeah,
yeah, well, that's part of my issue. It's, eventually this is kind of like the police pension plan. It's gonna come back to bite us down the road if we don't do something with it.
I think there have been some articles recently too about a bunch of police and things retiring and wanting to draw. So I don't know when this is going to come to fruition, but there definitely been, I think, articles coming out recently about more people drawing on pensions.
well, the thought to kind of share on all pensions right now is, again, bringing up COVID, but are people that are at a certain age that may be at a risk in some of these jobs, be it teaching, be it police officers, be it firefighters, are they going to choose to retire because of health risk?
They could.
Unfortunately, they may not be able to because of the changes in pension laws where they now have to be 65 to retire. You know, that
That could, yeah.
most of those were, especially those that we have in the state system, they were moved from, you know, especially our teachers. I mean, most of our teachers now have to work till like 65. Now, we have some who are, you know, grandfathered in a little bit under the old plan, but, you know, a lot of our firemen who, you know, now we have a very young staff, so we won't see a lot there, but, you know, our town hall employees are under that. You know, they have, you know, changed, all their pension plans have changed to make them retire much later. So they may not be able to, which is another concern. Not that, you know, not that I want to, you know, see them leave, believe me, because most everybody that we have are all excellent workers, and I'm sure the schools have the same issue that, you know, they have excellent people, but they are going to be working much longer in order to be qualified to collect on these pension plan rules now. I think I'm one of the last ones to get out under the old plan.
So where are we at? Do we want to mess with this or not?
I would put a question mark next to it, and if we need to get to it, then we, you know, it's going to be one of those last minute grabs that you're going to take. It's, you know, I think you need to, it's a matter of identifying the things that are potential. I mean,
Well, that's sort of what I'm doing. I'm not
Yep.
saying and at no point am I saying that, yeah, we got to do this. All right, fire department. We don't have a chief. We're saving money on that. Of course, we're paying Bruce a little more because he's out of rank.
we are, but I would say that, you know, what we have budgeted in there, you know, we advertised for something a little bit lower and a little bit higher. And we are paying Bruce now, so that, I don't think that that's a savings in it. And we are, I believe the resumes all being here by next week. So we are pushing hard to get that, you know, that position filled.
Okay, well, so I'd sort of put in there a number, but I won't now. Chief seminar,
Yeah, I would say that you'd be able to take that out.
That's
I mean,
gone.
That's.
okay, now the next thing I came to was the police department deputy chief, but I had forgotten the deal.
So my understanding of the deal, which will not take place until after this budget is resolved, because I did have this discussion with some of the council members, is that we have a member who obviously is high ranking in the police department, would move up to become deputy chief, come out of the union, and we would eliminate one of the patrol positions from the ranks.
And that would pay for it,
Well, it would pay for
most of it.
So it is kind of a wash because you are paying the employee now. Him moving over, you know, obviously there might be maybe a little bit of an increase with that. I don't think there'd be much of it, you know. His salary is not going to be a dramatic increase at all. And then you lose the probationary or the patrolman on the lower end.
So
So it's really not.
there would
it's not
really
like
be
you-
no savings there.
Well, you would save the patrolman. So the patrolman plus their benefits. So, you know, it's real money at the end of the day. Don't get me wrong.
So what do you think we should do with this?
Well, I think you leave it like it is, and I think it does reflect the fact that there's a patrol person out of it. I'd have to go back and look at I don't know, I don't have the details on, like, you know, the budget book that, you know, has all the backup to this.
Okay. I guess the point I'm trying to make is, you know, first blush, I thought, oh, well, there's $78,000, but there isn't.
So if you eliminate the deputy chief, you have to put the patrolman back.
Right.
So,
Which is 2/3 of it anyway, plus benefits.
all right.
All right. The next one, everybody will gasp. Paving and drainage.
So that's a big one.
As I've said before, nothing will get people's attention quicker than potholes and snow. But this is the pothole part of it. So do we want to take some of it, none of it, all of it? What do you think?
So you have 500,000?
It's $500,000. That's what we put in addition to what the resolutions put in.
So does anybody know what by resolution goes into that account?
Isn't it 25% of, anybody
Yeah,
got the
I think it's-
resolutions?
No, like, is there a
It's
history?
25%
25%.
of what's left over
So what I'm
from the
getting at,
DPW. So it's if they have anything left over, which they probably won't.
no, they will have some.
They might have some, right, with no snow?
Yeah. now that-
But
now that I know-
they've been transferring that to other accounts.
We have.
Right.
Hang on a minute.
But they've
We're
been, you know,
getting some-
most
Joe-
of the transfers have been within DPW though, so.
Joe, you usually have this stuff in the top of your head. What's that resolution read like?
Hang on. So I'm just wondering, has there been a history of, like, does anybody know what the history has been of how much has been turned over?
No idea.
I think very little.
I got it. Resolved that account 55406794 paving and drainage shall be restricted account to be used solely for the purpose of, oh no, wait a minute, that's the wrong one.
Next one down.
Next one down. Okay.
Six.
Resolved that the town, once all provisions of charter and accounting requirements are
That's the
met,
one.
shall transfer out of unexpended municipal expenses appropriation determined as of June 30th, 2019, 25% of the restricted capital expenditure account, which account may be used solely to accomplish capital projects approved as part of the budget proposal.
Yeah,
Read the
but
whole
that's,
thing.
but that's not the one that puts any in paving. Well, irregardless, you know, there is a mechanism
So
for that.
it's the budget committee's number 6.
Oh, sorry, I have that one too.
Yeah, budget committee.
That any encumbered funds as of June 30th will be returned to the general fund with the exception of the Public Works Department unencumbered funds that will be placed in a restricted paving, drainage, curbing, and sidewalk account.
Right, so that's just the Public Works Department's unencumbered funds then. right?
Yeah.
Well, it's not liable to be a lot,
Okay.
but you know, it's a big chunk of money and we could, you know, you could say 10, 20, 30, 40, 50%, whatever we decide, or whatever we think would be helpful.
So I took 300 out of it.
As of now, or you've been thinking about 300?
No, that's what I have on my numbers to take off for 2021.
Oh,
I
okay.
was trying, I've been working to try to come up with some numbers on, you know, that, I'm not saying it's all gonna come out of the school side, that we have our side of this that we gotta deal with too. So that's,
So does anybody else have any real heartburn with taking $300,000 out of the paving account?
Did I misunderstand? I thought we were going to put just enough money to do potholes next year. And then if we had extra money by resolve, we would put it into paving.
Well, that's what we're trying to decide now, Joe. How much, what are we comfortable with not putting in there ourselves?
Well, I can understand the road maintenance, in other words, filling the potholes in the spring. But as far as paving and, you know, projects, it just seems to me, at this point, we should be zero.
I'm not
Then-
comfortable with
I'm
that at
I'm
all.
not comfortable with zero.
Well, okay, I'm not comfortable with a 4% or a 5% tax
No.
increase. So,
4%.
you know, well, yeah, well, I'm not comfortable with that. I'd like to see a 2% tax increase. A lot of people are out of work. You got a lot of people who lost their businesses already and can't
know
even
that.
get into bankruptcy court, for God's sakes.
So
I
you
mean,
would rather, your recommendation is 0. Is that what I'm hearing?
And then if through resolve, like we talked about earlier, if we get money in that's from the casino, that money can go into the paving account. That's my thought. But
Does
don't
anybody else
spend it
want
until we
to,
have it.
any other opinions on this?
I like Chris's 300K.
Okay, Ruth,
I'm
thank
happy
you.
with, I'm happy with Chris's recommendation.
I'm happy with it.
As am I.
Jerry, what do you think?
I think that 300 is a good number too.
He was taking 300 out though, right? So
Right,
that
leaving 200.
leaving 200.
We'll give them, how do I put this? We'll recommend putting $200,000 into the account.
I mean, these are only preliminary until you get to see what it looks like when we're done.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not
when-
right.
Come
yeah.
back and grab more. I mean,
Yeah, we
Yeah.
may need
Yeah.
to grab more.
so, you know, I'm trying to leave some sort of cushions to see, if we can afford it, we can do it, but if we can, and we have to come back and find accounts that have money in them. This one, the OPEB account, you know, obviously, you know, we want to be able to, it's not like I have a bunch of surplus on this, and if we take out all the capital, now we're not doing paving. I'm kind of leery about not doing snow plowing because we never know what's going to happen there.
Yeah, we could have a hell of a winter. Who knows?
Yeah, which is another reason why I'd like to leave some money, because if it's a bad winter, you know, where do I
Right.
draw it from to cover the excess that what might be needed for that?
And we've been very lucky, Chris, so,
Oh,
you
I
know,
I
the odds are against us to
Yeah,
have another mild winter.
we're overdue.
We have salt and sand in surplus right now, right? So that's just what you're talking about is the benefit of it, of not of having a
We
good.
have some surplus. I'm not really sure exactly what's in there right now.
Okay, that's okay.
But I can get that for the next meeting. So let me go through some of the ones that I'd come up with on insurance, health insurance.
Yeah, we had some improvement. We're self-insured, right?
We pay an administrative fee, through the trust to manage our accounts. So we have exposure. Don't, you know, even though we are self-insured, you know, we have an experience rating and, our percentage came down. I think we factored in 3% increase for next year. It actually came in at 1%. So, trying to find out what page that's on.
Well, that's exactly the same thing that happened to the school department.
Right, so the increase that was budgeted was 50 grand, so I would say, you know, drop that down to probably 20.
20, yeah.
So make it 1,620,000, so you get a $30,000 savings.
Can you share the page number?
On mine is page 9, and this was done, I have, the one I'm working on is March 31st, so.
Oh, I'm looking at April 2nd, but it shouldn't be
Yep.
up there.
Okay. Thank you. I found it.
What line item?
It would be the health insurance, which is group
Health active?
health active, correct. Yeah.
And it had been 1.65.
There was a 3.13% increase, and I'm just saying it goes down to 1%. So if you take 1% of 1.6 million, it's like 32,000. So I would say we could probably, you know, generate some savings there. Drop it by 30 and leave 20 additional in it. So it's 1,620,000.
Great. Mhm.
So let me see, where else was I? I'm gonna give you some small ones. Like the town sergeant, I know not gonna be popular, but I dropped that by $1,000. I took the planner and dropped that salary by 3,000.
By how much?
3,000.
Is that because we have a planner now, and did they get hired at a lesser amount?
They got hired at 86,500, I believe. I'm only leaving 500 additional in there because when the annual review comes up, that short window to get from, I believe it's May till June, might require somebody to take care of a bump. So that's why I took $3,000 instead of the full amount.
How much did you say you dropped the planner by?
3,000.
Okay.
And the town sergeant was 1,000 now?
I dropped it from 1,500 to 500.
Oh, okay.
I know that they have duties to do, but You know, a lot of people taking cuts here. The special, I'm back to health insurance. We have that 16,500 employee special F/F. That now can be cut by 8,000.
Oh, is that,
Say
Oh,
that one again, Chris.
On page
Well-
9, under pension plans, no, under pension, I'm sorry. Pension plans, employee special retirement, account 5261,
right?
Mhm.
that can now be 8,000. I mean,
Why is-
cut 8,000. It should be 8,500.
Did somebody die or did the rules
Yes,
change?
no, somebody
Okay.
passed away.
Okay.
Chris, just for, could you give us when you, instead of the page number, the account number? Because I think we all have
Okay.
different ones and I'm
give
having
you
a
the
hard
group-
time flipping
I'll give you the
between.
grouping, like the pension plan, you know,
Yeah.
whatever, and the account number. So it's
That's perfect.
5261, and it should be at the end of this 8,500. So you'd be cutting 8,000 out of it.
Okay.
So I'm gonna make the police chief very upset with me. I'm gonna go to police salaries to, I believe, first class. So it would be account 5101, first class. I don't know what they get. Do you have in your books what they actually earn?
Who's that?
The salaries of first class firefighters, first class police officers?
You mean individually?
Yes, individually.
I
You
have,
have the detail in your books.
hold on, I have the book. What was it? 53300?
No, it's a police.
Yeah.
5101.
Hold on.
I do not have the book anywhere near me.
I have it right here. It's just going to take me a second to go through it. Deputy captain. I'm sorry, what were we looking for first?
First class,
First class.
Salaries,
It doesn't break it down individually. It gives us the
No.
same total and the breakdown, the 781.
718.
so I'm
Yeah,
gonna say-
718, sorry.
so
I
I'm-
don't think we've ever been presented with, it's not like the school department where they give us a list of employees and what they make
No, but do
individually.
we, I mean, we can figure it out. Do we know how many there are?
Well, yeah,
I
but
don't
it's
know.
not quite that simple
I'm
because some
gonna-
have been there longer than others and things.
I'm
We
gonna
have
say-
it from the
I'm gonna say
year
we're gonna
before.
reduce it by 2. So you're gonna take 120,000.
Okay.
We reduced it by 2.
2 staff, yes.
Well, then doesn't that not involve 2 other people who are going to be out of rank?
Nope.
No?
No, but it does have one other effect. On the last page of your budget, the 3330 school resource officer offset,
Yeah.
that gets eliminated.
But
Well,
that's
that
the money the
person-
school
that
department gives
person
us.
left.
The school department has cut that position.
They have
Okay.
cut it?
Yes.
Yes, it was on the cuts even before COVID when they came and talked to us. If you go back to the slides that the school department made, that was on
Well-
those cuts.
Yes, it was.
Wait a
The
minute. The last
resource
discussion I
officer?
heard about that was they were talking about it, but they came to realize that was a really hot button issue.
Yeah,
And
I
then
thought this,
when
I
Peter
thought
said-
is a hot
Jeremy said he
button.
wasn't going to do it.
Jerry
Well,
did say that.
Well, they're still dealing, if you watched their meetings, it's still on the cutting board along with a lot of other jobs. And there was an issue when Chief Jones came and talked to us because if they eliminate it from the school side, it's still in the contract on the police side.
Right.
And
They
that's
have
where we,
to pick it
that was
up.
right around the conversation, right before we all stopped meeting. I want to say
Right.
that was like one of the last ones with, how do we, because the town side would have to pick that up. It's not completely
That's right.
eliminated because it's in the police contract.
That's right. So there are some vacancies in the police department, and we can cut a couple of them and still stay with the minimum manning, and that's what I'm doing.
Chris, can
Okay,
you give me
so-
the new dollar amount that, not what it's cut by, but what the new dollar amount will be?
That I don't have. Hang on a minute.
Okay. So what did you cut? How much?
I cut 120.
Right.
Wow.
But the school resource officer is a reimbursement of 60,000.
Yeah, from the school.
But if
So-
they don't fund it, it doesn't, the town has to pick it up.
So
Correct.
is the new number 598092?
Correct.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, I plugged it in the sheet, and that's what you get.
All right, so then we no longer have an SRO, but then that person reintegrates fully into the police department, right?
And my view of that is if the school does want to come back to it, we can renegotiate that after the fact. And, it'll be a side agreement that they'll have to do with the police department.
Okay,
So, excuse me, Chris. So you're saying 2 first-class officers
Yes.
and the SRO?
No, the SRO was a reimbursement to the town. So if I'm cutting the position, I don't need the reimbursement for it.
Okay, so the SRO is included as one of the first class.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
okay, I didn't know about that one.
So no, neither does Chief, but he does now. I get a call first thing in the morning, believe me.
So will I.
I think he's expecting something.
He
so-
gets it.
He
He
does.
won't like it, but he gets it.
No, so it was 838,092. Is that the number you're looking for? I mean, I'm sorry, I did it backwards.
598092, right?
Hang on. I think I
Okay,
had
you
it.
lost. I just got lost. Budget committee represents.
598,092.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay, got it. Good.
Next was, let's see. Don't tell the budget committee this, but I cut their budget.
Well, we're gonna owe Andrew a ton of money.
Well,
Hey,
For all
Chris,
these
I have
extra
no problem
meetings.
with you cutting that, but are you gonna take the notes? Because there's,
you know what? I used to do that when I was on the committee at one time, and I've done it many times, even as chairman.
You got the
next year we
wrong
might-
chairman.
Next year-
It is a pain, believe me.
next year we might be a budget committee of like 4, so I don't,
Hopefully they get appointed some. Let's see what else I had.
can I ask a question? And it's always a hot button when I ask this question,
Sure.
but was there any conversation about town council stipends?
No, I haven't. I didn't broach that subject. Although,
What was the question, Jen?
have we
Town
cut the
council
technical
stipends, like we were looking at stipends, they cut the town sergeant and things like that. And I didn't know
Well-
if we would look at that across the board.
Oh, I don't know. We
I tried that last year. and
we
it didn't
talked about
sit-
No,
that
no,
last
I-
year.
Trust me, I
Yeah.
understand it was a hot button. I was just asked. It's only a question. I'm not putting a number out.
I had a question, Chris, on the
I-
number of police employees. Is there a minimum 30 or something like that you have to have?
There's minimum manning of 27.
Okay.
And we won't put ourselves into an overtime situation here.
That's a horse of a different color. I will say that we are in the process of hiring a couple of police officers because we have a couple of retirees coming. So we need to be positioned so that we can handle that without getting below the minimum manning issue. So,
And hopefully the people we send to the academy actually graduate.
yeah. I think what else I got here? I got,
That's been an issue in the past.
so we did talk last time about adding some money because of the Board of Canvassers needing for elections.
Right?
Um,
If we start having to send out 13,000 ballots, it could get real expensive real fast.
yeah. So I think between that and all the capital cut, I think there was a pretty good stab at our end, but trying to think of where else we could go. So let me go through it line by line.
Well, hang on a
What
minute.
about
So
DPW?
you did all that and I won't say who, but I had at least one committee member ask me about on-site wastewater.
So where is that?
That's under landfill operations 5530. It's 30
That's
grand.
one I had on my list too.
So let me explain to you. I know what that is.
I do too.
Let me find the account.
They always want a hell of a lot more than we give them.
So 5530?
Yep.
Oh, it's under landfill, right?
It's on the at the bottom of that category.
$77.32 is the number I got.
Hang on a minute. Oh, well, okay.
yeah,
I'm
it's
under
under
the major
55.
category, but the line item is 7732.
My understanding of this number, and it is an issue, that the town's wastewater department does the sewering and is responsible for all the sewering issues. But they also have taken on the role of administering the on-site septic systems.
Right.
So they have a program that they have that keeps track of some of the issues related to those. And we have a program that has been funded up through recently where people can borrow monies to repair septic systems.
Yep.
And they manage those aspects as well. While I'm not sure how much work they go into that, but they do review some of the applications. They assist the people through Rhode Island Housing and Mortgage Finance Corporation to process those loans. And ultimately the loans, the town borrows let's say all told, from what I understand, we borrowed 1.9 million and 1.6 of it has been repaid to date. There's an outstanding, these loans are for 10 years and they can borrow up to $25,000 to repair septic systems. So wastewater takes on a part of that role, and that's what that 30,000 represents to help manage that. Now, I'll tell you, it's a project I've been trying to get somewhat completed because there is no money left in that program. So I've had to go through with the infrastructure bank and Rhode Island Housing, trying to cobble together, the records, because I did not have a comfort level on where all this was. And I need to go back to the council and seek permission to borrow another chunk of money, whether it's 600,000 or 900,000, because there are a number of people waiting for funds to be available to borrow to fix their septic systems. And right now the town doesn't have any money to borrow against. So, and it's like a 2-month process. So that's a role I've been taking on, not the wastewater department. And, I'm kind of baffled as to why they receive so much money to do this, but it's something that's been agreed upon in the past. And
This committee increased it last year, and some of us did not agree with that.
so, I
Well,
know
I just
that
throw it out there as, something that's not contractual.
So they provide some service. I will say it comes at a pretty steep rate, but I'm not sure what you want to do with it, or how it was justified to get the 30,000 to start with, and who made that justification, whether it came from your town administrator or if it came from the wastewater department. Because it's not part of the landfill, it's not part of DPW.
Yeah, I don't know why it is where it is, but it's always been there.
Yeah, it's part of wastewater. It's not part of.
I agree. I mean, if you didn't know where to look for it, you'd never find it in the budget.
Now, I will tell you that, it is a lot of work to go through all those applications and to make sure they're vetted properly, but, at the end of the day, of, $25,000 a piece, the most you're gonna do is what, 24 applications? And that would be over the life of the next chunk of money. I don't know how much more they do with wastewater that, on-site wastewater that I don't know if they have rules and regulations that they monitor. Do they go out and monitor septic systems that, I don't know what their program is. But, I would hope that, maybe you have a little bit more information about it. I know that they were developing these rules and regs when I was last on the committee. They were coming around, but
They were sending letters to people and saying that they were needed to replace their systems. But I don't know that they were forcing anyone to. And some people said they did it when they really didn't need to yet. It just, it's a little bit like, I think it is also fuzzy because the obvious ones are what do you call those old systems, guys?
Cesspools,
Yeah. So,
piles of rock in the ground.
As I recall,
Okay.
a lot of this was the infrastructure that the town to be part in compliance was for us to catalog the systems and to keep up with it and to send notices.
I had my hand up.
right.
Hang on a minute, Joe. I didn't see it.
you're Doc, Joe, for kind of.
Yeah,
Well, if you remember the testimony we had, the first thing was, as far as the loan program, DEM, ISDS administers that program. Basically, they were just helping, as far as I understood, through the red tape. But they were also going out and inspecting people's homes. But we heard testimony saying that ordinance that was passed years ago was outdated and need to be, so it needed to be updated. So they weren't recommending the money to be spent as far as that. But as far as the loans go, sometimes when you're trying to deal with DEM, it is nice to have some help because it's confusing sometimes going through the red tape, and they'll give you a piece of paper and tell you to fill that out. And you go back up and they give you another piece of paper to fill out. And you might, it's like, couldn't you give them all at the same time? Well, so it's confusing up there. So some help for people to get their septic systems. The loan is a great idea for the elderly who are still in their home and have a totally failed system so they don't shut their water off. So, some money should be in there to help administer that program, but I'm not sure 30 is the number because they're not out inspecting the systems anymore.
All right.
At least they're not supposed to be.
I just don't know if there's an agreement with wastewater in the town. So that might be something if one of your committee members want to reach out to wastewater to find out, is there an agreement with the town to fund that at that level?
Well, the council president told us that the ordinance was outdated and it needed to be, fixed, and they kind of poo-pooed the idea of them going out. And besides the fact they're duplicating what DEM ISDS does, if there's a failed system, the town should be contacting DEM. They're the proper authority. That's the reason we got sued out in the four corners, because sticking our nose into places we don't belong. So,
To my knowledge, we don't have an agreement on what the funding level will be. They approach us and ask, they mention a fund level, and then we decide what we'll do.
Okay, so I'll leave that up to you guys then.
So, we'll just put a question mark or whatever. All right. So now the library is within $2,000 of being level funded as it is. What do you think is going to happen with Beach's salaries and expenses?
So, the beaches at least make money. So,
Well, do we expect to be open? Do we expect to have lifeguards, and do we expect to collect?
yeah, we're doing that now.
There
We've
you
been
are.
doing it since June 26th.
Okay.
So we're running as best that we can with recreation for the beaches with lifeguards and gatekeepers.
And in fact,
We are not doing summer recreation as it relates to like camps and those kind of things.
That all went away. That was 14 grand, something like that.
is there no Little League?
Little League is not part of our budget.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
And if there is Little League, there is our recreation, any exterior league or supporting sports league that is not town sponsored or town sanctioned has to go through recreation in order to utilize the fields anyhow. And we are requiring anybody who wants access to use our facilities, they have to certify that they can comply with the COVID responsibilities on their own without town assistance. We'll let them use the land, but we can't commit to doing all the things they need to do to run their leagues or their competitions.
Okay, that sounds good. Chris, I'm familiar with Fogland quite a bit, and we had many people that we could have been charging much earlier than that date. I just wanted to mention it to you. I was going to tell you that.
I'm not disagreeing with you. The issue is the lifeguards and gatekeepers are school kids. They were in school.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, then that brings us down to the real exciting issue. If we were to level fund the schools, that would be $637,800. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not saying we want to go there. I'm not saying we should, but it is available.
And it would comply with, what they believe the rules are and the laws are, but that's, I know you have a question to solicit with that as well too, but I think you need to start somewhere.
Well, that would take us to maintenance of effort.
That number can always be increased if you're not as bad as you think you are when you're done. I just don't know until you put all these numbers in your spreadsheet to figure out where you really are. It's kind of, we're taking stabs at things and we really don't know until you put them on that spreadsheet.
Well, that's exactly right. So, yeah, we're just bandying about what could we do? What might we do? What would that maybe save? And then work our way out of that hole.
Right. It's kind of the worst case and then work it back.
That's the way I look at it.
So the other number that I know is a problem is on page 6 in mine, which is account number 1100, which is the town referendum.
Yeah.
Because we're going to have 2 of them, at least. You're going to have this one that we're doing as the catch up for to set the 2021 budget. But you're going to have another one to do the 2022 budget. So hopefully timely, and we don't have the same issue that we had this year.
Wait a minute. We budgeted for this one already.
We didn't budget for the one we're trying to do in July or August.
No, that would be the one we're budgeting for now. Each year
Right,
we
but you're going to have another one in May.
No, but each year we budgeted for one.
Right, this budget is taking care of all of 2021. We will just subtract out what we allocated for the first quarter.
That's fine. If you just subtract out, that's fine.
Right, but there's not enough money in to do the second one once you subtract it out.
Well, wait, no, I'm saying we did budget in one FTR per year. That's what we always do.
But 20.
What happened to the 15 grand that we budgeted for?
So the fiscal year for last year ended, that money, if they would roll into the general fund and we have to budget for it twice for this year.
Right.
I'll be right with you, Mike.
Mike has something.
He's a mime.
Mike Dakotas. He's live.
People were just talking left and right, and I was just having my hand up. People were shouting. I haven't said a word in 2 meetings. Not
No,
one
you
word.
haven't.
That's not our fault.
Well, thanks for the sidebar, Ruth. I wanted to let Chris Cotta know. Chris, I respect what you're doing. I was going to bite my tongue, but I'm getting a lot of feedback right now on my phone. I won't support any of these cuts to the police department. I just wanted to put that on record.
That's fine.
I wasn't going to say anything till we meet and we vote, but people are telling me right now that they're not happy they're watching this. So I'm going to make it known that this probably is going to be very unpopular. I'm not going to be able to support that. I just want to throw that out there.
Believe me, I don't want to have to do this either. It's but realistically trying to figure, tell me where I can get this kind of money from out of this side of the budget.
I'll do my best when I get my pencil out and come back.
No, these are just, markers that, I mean, if I have to do it, that's, I mean, I don't want to do this. It is what, it is what it is. I mean, we have a big hole to deal with and we need to find categories that we can take money from.
Yeah, Mike, this is worst case scenario. None of us want that. None of us.
No,
this is
I
worst
agree.
case.
I agree with you, Mike.
I understand, but public safety right now is a big issue, and
Totally.
I know that they were already pretty lean coming into this budget season. They'd given up a lot. They came to us and let us know the sacrifices.
Right.
You know, I know schools will be a hot button, and look, for you that don't know, I mean, unless something drastic happens, I'm going to be on the school committee come November. But I'm all about playing fair for all the departments, DPW, everything. Can't see cutting public safety right now. But anyway, I don't want to go backward. I was going to save it for the next one, but I just want to put on record now.
I appreciate your comments. I really do. And those who are following you or on, you know, the was it the YouTube videos that they're making comment? I'm not disagreeing. I have one more cut that I did not say earlier. I was trying to figure out where it was coming from, but it was Public Works would also have a cut of an employee.
What was that? Cut one employee?
Yes, at Public Works. I mean, I'm getting to the points where, you know, there's not a lot of fluff in this budget. But, you know, we've had somebody retire since early May, and we're doing without them. And while it's a struggle for the rest of the staff, it may be if we have to make cuts, that's where it's, you know, we got to do what we got to do.
Joe?
Going back to the school budget,
Yep.
even if we were to level fund, if state funds come in less, we all know that we would be responsible to make up.
Yes, we will.
So I think the responsible thing for the town people would be to level fund. I mean, or presuming that the legislature is not going to relax, you know, the mandate of maintenance of effort,
No.
then as low as we can go is level fund.
That's exactly
And,
right.
You know, he's just talking about not cutting the police. Well, you got to cut somewhere. I mean, we're looking at a $3 million shortfall minimum just from, I think, from the casino. So we don't know what the state's going to do. We don't know if stimulus is going to come in and bail out the state. And if they do, is the majority of the money going to end up going to Pawtucket and Providence? And we'll see a couple of pennies. So the responsible thing to do for the taxpayers would be to cut the budget. And then if the money comes in from the state, it always goes on top of our budget anyway. The school gets it all and they can add back in. But we need to think about, you know, what's going to happen in worst case scenario right now.
That's my opinion. We should find the basement and then find a way to dig ourselves out of it as far as we can. So all of this is just discussion. It's not going to necessarily happen. It might. We don't want to do anything stupid. We won't, but we're going to do what is necessary because we do have a 4% cap. It hasn't gone away. We do have maintenance of effort. It hasn't gone away. So we got this box we got to work within. Yes, Jen.
I think it's important to recognize that none of us are in a position where we want to make any of these cuts. Like
Nope.
we had pretty much gotten before COVID to a point where we basically were in the last few phases of the budget. But unless we have a solution to either generate more revenue or make suggestions as to where to cut someplace, we still have the same situation. Like we don't have magic money. So either we have to figure out how to generate more income, which I don't think we can, or we have to make some horrible decisions as to cuts that we have to make that nobody sitting at this table wants to make. So we can pick to fund something, but then we have to cut something out. So we can really want to support something, but unless we have a suggestion of a dollar amount and a line item to pull it over, then we have 4% and we have maintenance of effort, and then the money's got to come from somewhere.
Yep. It's not monopoly. We can't print it. Yes, Ruth. Ruth,
Ruth, you're muted.
you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. Just wanted to remind a couple of things when you're talking about the police department that Mike mentioned, which is really true, and the safety issues are really important right now. The police department, as I mentioned before, has been very patient, and a lot of other town sides have been, and they didn't get what the schools got last year. Yes, I understand that they were level funded for a couple of years but they got large salary increases. So, it's a little bit of a trade-off there for what money goes where in the schools. I know that's not our domain, but that's what they did. The police department never got a 4% increase recently, and they didn't get an extra $500,000 like the school did last year. So I'm not sure. Yes, we don't want to do it, but I'm not sure I feel worse about cutting the school than I would about the police department. I think I have some value system going on there inside that says we really need to protect the police and the fire right now, that this is an emergency situation that we've been in. And yes, we're probably going to get out of it pretty soon, but I think that and the schools will be reimbursed for their COVID-19 costs, I think, at some point through the feds and state. So I just want to be really careful. Yes, we don't want to do that to the schools but we're in this situation. So I just want to mention the other side of what they got. And again, last comment is that if we never had the casino money, this town would go forward. You need to remember that. If we never had the casino money, we would still be going forward okay. So we need to be not like, a privileged little, I don't want to say rich kid, but I mean, just, have some humility. Have some humility on what you can do. It's not like you can have everything you dream of right now, especially right now. I'm asking. Go ahead, Jen. Yeah.
Point of right, what we're talking about right now is what is the we can cut out of everything. And then once we find the bottom line number, we go the other way and add back.
That's
right?
fine. Yeah, I agree.
Pretty much.
And we're looking at every single department.
Yes.
And we can argue later what needs. We'll be a little more informed from the school when we talk to them in a week. But right now we don't have to have any discussion about who needs to be protected and who doesn't.
Well, there is the safety issue.
That's a good point.
We're just
Tom
looking for the
Haley.
bottom.
Tom Haley hadn't said anything all night.
Come on, Tom.
Okay, Jenna, I wholeheartedly agree with what you just said. This is an academic exercise. I just want to flash this thing in front of you again from last week. I want to show you where we are.
Okay.
With all these tough choices, even though it's academic.
Hang on to your hats.
And not really tough. We've only cut about a little over $1 million. What we need to cut is like $3.5 million to get to 4%.
And so that would give us 4%.
We're not even a third of the way there. So,
Tom, can I ask a question? Is that adding in some of the general fund money though? Which we haven't decided on a dollar amount there.
That's a big chunk we haven't added in yet.
So then that's the discussion that we should have if we're at, we still have to get closer, but we haven't decided on a dollar amount from the general fund that would be safe. And then we're actually looking at the number that we have to cut.
Right. Yeah. Even if we put the whole $1 million in that these sort of allowed us to add to the revenues, that would make us 2/3 of the way there.
Yeah, I think we need to pick a number to add in there and then start to cut further or look at where we're looking at. But I think that instead of keep cutting, we have to find out what we're going to add in first.
So something doesn't make sense to me, because if I take just the capital, which was the 324, the 885 minus the 450, that's that's 849,000, and not counting any of the other cuts. And you said there was 600,000 you would cut on the school to make it level. That's 1.4 million. That's and that's not counting the insurance, the public safety, the paving, something doesn't make sense. It doesn't make the pavings in there too. We cut more than $1 million. I don't understand this.
Right, like 1.5 maybe. I don't know, something like that. What also doesn't make sense when we went through the exercise I did last time. You had for the capital expenses, a minimum of $229,000.
That's still in there. I didn't include that.
Right, we didn't take that, we didn't take that.
No, but the 324 and the 885, which don't include that 229, is
Okay.
1.2 million, and you add back 450 for the recycling center, that's 849 there, right? The
Yeah.
school cut alone was 600,000. That's 1.4 million. Paving is another 300,000. That's 1.7 million. The public safety was 120,000. That's 1.9 million. So it's more than $1 million. I don't understand how you say there's only $1 million cut.
Okay, yeah, the way I did it is I just looked at the bottom line on the, because whatever I've been cutting out of the sheet is rippled down into the levy. So maybe there's some mathematics that's wrong.
Okay, because I'm just confused by it. That I knew that there was a chunk that I was taking on to be responsible for that, and when you take 600 out for the schools, that only leaves $400,000 cut on my side, and I know that there's more than that.
Okay, I did something wrong. My apologies.
No, it is. I just want people to understand that there are more cuts, that number just doesn't float right to me. It's
Right. And so while we're talking about it, and it's much less, when you brought up the town sergeant cut, you also mentioned something about planning, which was apparently near.
So it was 1,000 on the town sergeant, 3,000 on the planner.
And what do you mean by the planner?
So the planner salary is in your budget at 90,000, so it should come down to 87.
Okay.
So the sergeant was at 1,500, it should come down to 500.
Okay.
There's a special pensions that is 16,500, should come down to 8,500.
Okay, wait. Hold on.
I have it out.
Right. The special retirement.
Right, so public safety, the 2 police officers was 120,000.
Right.
The paving was 300,000.
Recycling.
Not recycling, this is
I know.
paving.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I got that one.
I cut the budget committee by 1,200, but I don't know what you guys did with it. Public works employee, 45,000.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
Health insurance, 30.
Hey, Chris, the DPW was cut by 45?
Yes.
Thank you.
Run that one by me again.
Public works,
Yeah.
we have a vacant position there that we haven't filled.
Oh, so that's one of the maintenance workers minus 45,000.
Yep.
And you took 300,000 out of paving, or was it 200?
300, I left 200.
Yeah, okay. I got that wrong.
So, that comes up to about almost $1 million just on my side of the budget. And then if you do 600,000 on the schools, to bring it to level to the MOE, and then you've got, the money in the general fund reserve. I don't know what, if you took $1 million out of that, that's 2.6 million, so we're getting there. It's just, there are other, the OPEB piece that we talked about, but we didn't do anything with.
Well, if you take out what we just discussed, plus what is available in the reserve, that negates the entire casino revenue.
Hey, Chris, do you have conversations with town council about trash?
That's a loaded question.
They talk trash all the time.
Trying to ask it in a very open, vague way, because I'm going to say it. When the petitioner budget, spearheaded by Mr. Katz a few years ago, was as thick as 0.9, he didn't put line items in that year, just sent it back to the budget committee, thank God, before I was on it.
Right.
And that was the big talk about cutting the trash. I mean, are we back at that? Could that be on the table?
It could be. It's obviously not something I really want to do, but everybody, you talk about doing that and people are just going to say, well, you're penalizing me as a taxpayer, but all these cuts that we just got through discussing, we'll penalize you as a taxpayer for those too.
That's what I'm saying. We're penalizing.
I know, I get it. But trash is something very personal to people. If they don't ever deal with the police department or public works department or the town's insurance,
I know.
if they don't ever deal with it, it doesn't affect them at all.
Portsmouth and Middletown have a way where they're able to do it for about $145 per resident. But the whole point of it is, we've had people go out and support these alternate budgets and they want low taxes. Well, this is what you get when you get low taxes. Your schools decrease, your scores in your schools decrease. You have positions you can't fill. I don't have to tell you that as the administrator. You have salaries so low, people don't want them. And now people are saying, well, don't take my services like trash. Well, I mean, if the majority of the town wants to keep voting that way, we have to prove a point. If we want to keep our services, we have to do something. It's not free. And someone mentioned tonight about a dream situation or scenario. I mean, I've been quiet for two. I'll let Joe speak because I know he's got his hand up, but I would love to see the trash get cut. I'm on record for saying that too while I'm at it.
Okay.
Hey, Joe.
Well, to that point, it may not be popular, but if push comes to shove, we could raise the price of bags. I know it wouldn't be popular, but it's a service-driven, it's providing a service and you're paying for the service. We're going to see an increase if we have to close the landfill because we're going to be trucking to Johnston. And
that's another question I have because I don't know where you are on trash recycling in this budget.
Well, we had testimony saying, I think it was close to $500,000 a year.
But is that number in the budget?
I believe we budgeted for that.
What are we talking about?
The increase in the trash cost.
Yeah, it went up.
Yes.
Yeah, the hauling cost went up for the same amount of trash, and then it includes, I believe, for the recycling.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Yeah, I see it now.
Yeah.
It's at the top. It went from 738 to $1.2 million, almost $1.2 million.
I mean,
Yeah, so it went up another $700,000.
Okay, so that potentially, depending on what our answers from DEM, could be another significant reduction.
Well, my point again was to look at the bags, and that's something that the council could.
But then you'd have to change the resolution
can't believe
because the bag money only goes into the capping.
Well, no, not after it closes. Then it would go towards it was discussed that the bags would stay because of the recycling issue, but the money could then be used to go to pay for the extra trucking.
Well, then we get rid of so then the resolution would no longer be applicable.
Yeah.
No.
I agree with Joe on this. I think part of when the cost of this program.
I'm dropping dead over here. Sorry.
Joe, I sometimes do that when you agree with me. But I think when we see increases in this contract and things like that, and then that some of the costs should go to the bags, or like Middletown did, I don't know, some kind of permit that you put on your can to kind of offset that. Because if not, we're just using that to increase the program keeps going up, but our taxes keep going up and people don't realize it. And I'm not saying go up substantially, but somewhere that we can recoup some of that cost that this contract and the fees and the cost are going up.
So
there's been talk of getting rid of bags and doing stickers.
Yep.
Well, whatever the cost is, because the truth is, whether we close a landfill this year, next year, whatever, we're still going to have costs because we still have to keep covering it for years. I was on that budget committee, Mr. Dakotas, when we were handed that. We had to cut $500,000 out of it. And that was the easiest thing. We were trying to nickel and dime, and we ended up doing the trash, which did not come to fruition because the council was able to move money around and protect it. And the reason that they did that was the outrage from the residents. And from what I recall and what I had heard, we probably would not be able to pass a budget that has cutting trash out completely. So,
And I appreciate that, but here's the question. We've talked about this before, and this isn't the first budget committee. How is Middletown and Portsmouth with similar tax rates to where we are now? How are they able to do it? They do it by charging each resident about $145 a year. I mean, I understand we have people that say, I already can't afford this, right? But if we don't want big tax increases, if you take out something large like trash and you tell someone, well, look, you have options. You could pay someone $400 or $500 a year to come take your trash like a dumpster, or the whole town gets together and they do what a Middletown or Portsmouth do, and they pay $145 and they get a sticker and they get one for recycle and they get one for trash. And those towns aren't falling apart. And if you drive on Aquinic Island, I don't think you see trash all over the place. I mean, I hear, well, if we get rid of it, Tiverton, people will throw their bags all over the roads. Well, why don't they do that in Middletown and Portsmouth? They don't. We're a civilization. We have to start looking at benefits versus cost. And one of them is, if we get rid of $700 something thousand, it's like the buses with the schools. We keep getting bent over the barrel over this stuff. When are we going to say, hey, listen, there's a better way to do it? But anyway, I know people have their hand up. Sorry.
Yeah, it's only, and Mike, this is just talking about 1 year of this, correct? 1 year. We're not doing this going forward, correct? On the trash?
I would like to see the town
Chris,
get away from it in general altogether. I don't see what the problem is with the $145 per resident. If someone says I can't afford it, well, I mean, I don't know what else to do. We're in a pandemic, number one. Number two is, do we want to cut DPW? Do we want to cut fire?
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on this. I just wanted to make sure we're talking about 1 year things for the crisis.
No, I would say get rid of it altogether and go private.
Chris, are you talking, when you talk about these things that you're talking about, it's more like a 1 year this budget thing, right, Chris Cotta?
So I'm not sure exactly what the question is, but if you're talking about the maintenance, maintaining the bag fees, and whether or not those funds can go to general fund, my understanding of it is the bag fees are going to continue even if we did close the landfill, because it will help subsidize the first and foremost the balance of what is due to close the landfill. While there's $9 million sitting there now, it is still short. There's not enough money to do the entire closure. So I don't think any of those monies are going to go towards anything until there's enough money to completely close that landfill.
And sorry, Jen, just last thing for Mike. Are you saying, Mike, that if we don't get trash pickup, what's involved for us personally? Like, do I just have to take my bag and dump it into the DPW site myself?
No, they come to your house. It's no different. They come, you'll probably get the mechanical trucks. They'll come take your bin. It'll dump it like they might do it every 2 weeks for recycling, every week for trash, but
okay.
I mean,
Thank you.
Jen would know better because she's on the island more than I am.
And Jocelyn.
Jen.
So first off, I know we don't make this policy, but just to kind of look at the two communities that Mike mentioned, and there's an opportunity just like with Lincoln where, to learn something, there's something to learn from Middletown and Portsmouth with what they went through with trash, right? So when Middletown first decided they were going to do it, they purchased all these bins. It was going to be free to the resident. And then they very quickly realized it could not be because the town was now absorbing this huge cost. So first thing they did was they went to those stickers that cost about $145,000 or $145 a year. And you had to have a sticker on your can every year. And then they went now to the bags, because again, it's still not sustaining it. And on some level, there should be a percentage in your taxes, but on some level, it should also, as we get increases, the bag cost should kind of sustain it. Where Portsmouth had an opposite thing where they weren't even offering curbside. They just told their residents they were going to pay a huge amount to put a sticker on their car to go to the dump. And then the same company that we use for trash saw an opportunity to make some money, and they said they would do curbside pickup for people at a cost that was less than the sticker. So what a lot of Portsmouth residents did was they just called Mega and said, can you come to my house? Mega provided them with a can, and now they pay the Mega bill instead of giving the town the money for the sticker, and they would have had to drive it themselves. So we've had this program for a little while. First we had, where we didn't have the bags, then we've had the bags for quite a bit, but we've incurred costs that have gone up. So then maybe a small percentage of cost should go up on the bags to help flatten that out so that we're not constantly trying to add that into the budget.
It's almost like health insurance. So 10 years ago, many people didn't have co-insurance and very small co-pays. And what's become popular and normal over the last 5 or 6 years, especially if anyone works for a private entity, is you pay more into your health insurance every year. Do you like it? No. Do you remember when you didn't do it? Sure. I mean, okay, now let's look at trash. We're Tiverton. Have we always had it part of our taxes? Yep. Is that great? Sure. Now, 3 years ago, our tax rate was $19.05. We've gotten the tax rate since the casino, and even before that, down to 15 and change now. Well, we probably aren't going to be able to sustain this low tax rate because, as we're talking about tonight, we're losing services. We're talking about cutting police, fire, DPW. And what we need to do is come up with solutions. So I don't mind being a vocal advocate of a budget committee to make tough decisions. But when we're talking about getting rid of essentials that I think were already bare bones, the trash is so little. The people that will be upset over paying something like $145 have a right to gripe. But as a community, like Joe keeps saying, well, we're elected or we're placed here, however we got here, to make tough decisions. And when this comes down to it, this trash thing isn't so hard. Jen just told you how Portsmouth was able to be picked up by MEGA and was just, I mean, we have MEGA picking up our trash now anyway. It's not like they're not going to pick our trash up.
I agree.
The problem here is though, if we decide to remove a bunch of funding from trash with the idea that we will displace that by increasing bag fees, this becomes a policy decision. We can't make it.
We can't, but there's no reason why at this point in the junction, we couldn't ask the council to consider it.
We can do that, but
they've got to be keenly aware of the situation we're in.
Yeah, this takes time, and we can float that balloon, but.
Well, Jay, people say to me all the time, that budget committee, just a waste. You don't even do anything. The town council makes the rules, the school committee makes the budget, and then you basically rubber stamp it. Maybe you move money around here or there, not a lot. Okay, listen. We've been doing this now since January. It's now July. We didn't sign up to be here in July to do this, nor did we know we were going to have a pandemic. But what we can do is be a budget committee that can offer solutions, and they're not going to be popular. You go to a school committee or a town council meeting, you know that half the people in the room are in favor of something and the other half aren't. That's how life is. But we have an opportunity to make some changes for the town, and usually people are upset at first, but they tend to cope with it and they realize that it's reality and they're going to deal with it. And I'm totally on board with making sure we don't cut more police and another DPW. I mean, you go to Facebook in the winter, how many people complain about the streets not being plowed? Do we want to go there? The trash is such an easy thing. It's sitting in front of us. It's just there.
I agree. Jay, can I comment on?
Well, Deb Janik had her hand up.
I was before you, Ruth.
Okay.
And I'm after her.
So I agree, Mike. I don't want to see police cut. But where are we, Chris, in the contract with the trash pickup?
So, that's a good question, huh? I don't know. I'm gonna have to dig that out, but I
Yeah.
don't think we're at the end of it. I'm pretty sure.
So-
we're
But
not.
it was October or November. Joe, you would know.
I thought we just renewed.
Yeah,
I thought we,
I thought we
was
rolled it
fairly
over.
new Too.
We
Yeah, I think
did
we're
last
not
year.
for a year.
So that we'd have to get out of that contract and that'd cost us money too. So
Question, please.
just something to keep in mind.
Yes, Joe.
Well, let me first say that I in no way intended on taking all of the money that we put in for trash out of the budget. My
No.
thought was if we do have to close the landfill and we do incur more costs for trucking to Johnston, that those increases, that $500,000 in trucking come out of the bag fees. In other words, the only other thing I say, Chris had said, well, we might have to use that money because we're not going to have enough. If we don't have enough money to close the landfill, we're going to have to float a bond. So the bag money is going to be there too. And maybe let's say, well, we got to pay off the bond costs. I mean, it's all coming from the general fund. I understand that. Because I believe the cost is going to be well over 10, maybe 12 million to close it. It's going to be a slow burn over a few years. But just increase the bag fees to pick up the extra cost. I'm not talking about changing the whole system. I agree with the one-arm bandit and all that. We fought to change that in the bi-weekly pickup for recycles. I thought we should have went to that too, but the council turned it down. We have what we have, bottom line. But if there's going to be extra costs when we close the landfill, then we need the money. That could come. So I don't want to increase the budget
Hang on, Jim.
Jennifer, I'm next.
for that portion.
Jay, I don't know that we can do this, like Jay said, can we make these kinds of changes? That I'm not clear on, but I wanted to mention on the bags, I agree with Mike and Jocelyn, because bags per amount dumped is actually, more fair in a way, because it's people who have more trash are paying a little more. So you know what I'm saying? That makes a little sense to me. And that is okay. I think that, I don't know, like Jay said, though, that I don't know what we can do as a budget committee. So I'm on a couple different issues there. And I know Chris will get back to us on the contract, but can we do what Joe says and increase it as a budget committee or not?
We cannot, my point was this. We have Chris Carter sitting here, the town administrator. He speaks with the council. All right. It would be the council's, actually it'd be in the new budget. So I guess it would be the next council that would probably be making the decision if they were going to raise the bag fees. That's my point.
Okay, so Chris,
We are supposed to put an extra $500,000 in there for trucking. That's our decision. If we don't put that money in there, the town council has to raise it somewhere. Therefore, their option would be increased bag fees. So yes, we do have a decision in it, whether or not we put that extra money in there.
I got your point.
Jennifer Rashley, you had your hand up.
Right. And Chris, you can look into that if you think it's wise. Okay, Jen, sorry, it's your turn.
Jen, did you have your hand up?
Yes. The only thing we can do with trash is to reduce the number. We cannot affect any policy change. We cannot. So it's useless to discuss. The only thing we can do is keep it where it's at, heighten it or lower it. That's it.
That's it? That's what we can do now. Yes.
That's the only thing we can do. We can't dictate how much the bag fees are. That's the town council.
How quickly could they do that? I mean, just asking.
I don't know, but look, we don't need to keep on beating this around.
We can move
Well,
forward.
they could do it at the next meeting if they wanted to. It's just a vote.
We could also talk to the town council as individuals. And I think Chris will probably float the balloon by him too, that it was mentioned. All right, so where are we at? We've discussed how much more we could take out of the municipal side, what we could do with the school side. What the treasurer has told us increased revenues look like. What we think is going to happen in 2021. And we've just got to cobble this all together. Yes, Jen.
I'm just wondering where Tom's at with the changes that, like, do you have a better picture of where we're at with those cuts and with something added in from the general fund, how close we are?
Yeah, I want to go through this with Chris probably offline just to make sure I didn't miss anything. I think I got most of it.
So before you say that, there was one other item we discussed last week.
Okay.
And I don't know if you have it in there, but it was actually adding money back in the budget, and it was for the tax collector.
Oh,
Because we are gonna have to send out 2 sets of tax bills. And there's some programming fees in order to get this 1/4 tax bill out. So we'd be looking at like adding another 25 grand in.
okay, let me find that.
So trying to think what account number that is. That's
2150.
yeah, it's wherever her tax bill things are.
Oh,
So tax collector.
tax bills and postage.
Yep.
Double
It
that.
looks like 17 something now.
It's 16,840.
Yeah. So we would need to double that and add some programming fees. So I think the whole thing comes to about 25 grand.
Okay. I'll
But then we also talked last week about, and somebody needs to confirm this with Nancy, although I don't think she's ready yet to do it, is whether or not they were gonna have to do mail ballots. And the cost of it.
Yeah, and that could be 13,000 ballots.
So
Wouldn't
I ju-
people
I
have
just-
to request those ballots?
No,
No,
from what I've seen, from what I understand,
they just mailed them
we
to all
would have to
registered voters.
provide a ballot to every registered voter in town,
And the
whether they
problem with
vote or
that,
not.
the
Wait a
problem
minute.
with that whole thing too, I mean, there's a lot of
Why
problems
can't we
with it,
just
but
open
also-
the polls?
So, I'm sorry, just to finish my thought. The problem with that too is that you have a lot of people on the books that are registered that don't live here anymore.
That could be.
This is.
But in any event, that's why I mentioned, that it could become quite expensive.
And
That's
we
a
weren't
lot.
talking about for the FDR, Joe. This is about the presidential election.
I realize, but
Okay, I just,
why? I don't understand why would we be sending ballots out to people that can go to the polls? Why wouldn't people just request, if they don't want to go to the polls, just request an absentee ballot? Why do we have to mail them to people that are dead? I mean, I realize my cousin died like 14 years ago and she's still on the voting rolls. I mean, I can't believe some of the stuff I see.
I'm not gonna get into that, all that.
No, we're not gonna get into this.
Is that law mandated to us?
It isn't yet, but there's a potential that it may be.
Let's wait
That's-
till it is. I mean,
Well, I'm putting it on your radar just so that you have,
okay.
Yeah.
I don't want you to.
It's something,
Never heard this.
we better
And
be
it-
ready.
It
case.
might be on our radar, like, we might have to make a decision on it before it's ruled on, because
Right.
our work might be complete while they're still trying to decide it.
And we have 25 grand in our general fund if we had to. I mean, there's just no problem with 25 grand. So I don't see why we have to worry about this at all. Just my
All
opinion.
right, so what's going to happen here then is, like I said, Tom is going to be working on spreadsheets
Or whatever amount it was.
and I will. And I'm sure Chris is, and with information from the treasurer and anywhere else can get it, plus what we've talked about here tonight, we should come up with some fairly informative documents to tell us where we're at.
So I will give you some other good news that came out of our league calls this week. While it's still not definite and not permanent, I've been, and many other city leader has been beating the drums for weeks on end here about school aid. And we heard from Steve Coleman this week from Municipal Finance that it appears very similar to what 2020 happened, that the governor will commit to whatever was pre-scheduled, with one exception, because they are under the same, they're in the same process that we're in. They are allowed to roll their 2020 budget forward without an appropriation vote by the legislature or signed by the governor by 1/12 per month. So while they have a number in for educational aid, because this issue came up, are we going to get our July payment? And for educational aid based on what number? So it appears that because they're limited to their 2020 budget allocation, they're committing to give us 92.5% of the July payment, which would be the same formulary, but based on 2020's number. What we don't know is, will they do a catch up once they finish their budget to bring it to whole? So once the budget, we believe, and this is what we were trying to get out of Steve Coleman, is that the governor is going to commit to paying the state educational formula that very similar to how she did all of our state aid monies for 2020. She'll do the same for 2021 once they adopt the budget. And that we believe that those numbers are not going to change. There's so far, no change in those numbers. The only caveat is because they're working on the 2020 budget for the first couple of months, that we may get a reduced share, but we're hoping to see that she'll commit to catching up for those limited months that we have. So, which is, it's a good sign. We just haven't seen that guidance in writing yet. But every city was clamoring about, what are we going to do about our aid? So they did commit to providing the money for the public service corp tax. We've already received those monies for 2021. And they're working on pilot monies and some others. And they're working along the schedule that has been previously authorized, that was put out for the original budget guidance. So
Chris,
we're getting a better comfort level that we will get what was originally put out there, and whatever shortfall she'll deal with by keeping the CARES money and filling the state's holes with that, without sending CARES monies to each individual municipality, which is not a bad thing. I mean, that's kind of what we're all hoping for. We just want the guidance to say that that's what you're going to do.
so
There's been movement, is what I'm getting at.
so correct me if I'm wrong. What she put out there in January,
Well, yeah, the
might not,
7.5 million.
it might not be that number, but it would certainly be level from last year.
It'll be level from last year based on the change in the formulary. So the funding of education has a formula that gets changed every year. That
Right.
number that Denise was talking about earlier, that $194,000, that's when they do the review in like March and April. They figure out how many kids were actually in the district based on their reporting systems. And they gave us a catch-up number based on the number of kids we had in the system. So it was the 7.1 million plus the 194,000. The next year's number is 7.5 million. We believe, based on what was represented, that they are going to try to stay to that schedule. That's what they're offering. We just haven't seen that guidance in writing yet, but for the first July payment, that we believe that we're going to get paid accordingly. So I'm just trying to give you some better news that, at least we're working towards getting to that guidance that we're all looking for.
Chris, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Will that be based on enrollment from the previous school year, or will it be based on this year's enrollment?
I think it works off of the previous school year, that from the adjustment that they made in April or March and April. Those numbers are what they'll predicate on moving forward. And then next year in March and April, there'll be another adjustment. It'll go up or down based on where our kids are, how many numbers we have, and we'll see a slight adjustment at the end of the year next year.
I'm just wondering if we're going to have, there's some conversation on kind of parent boards and things like that about some, parents that are not comfortable sending their kids back, looking into homeschooling. So I'm not sure if we're going to have a drop in numbers and then those kids would come back after COVID.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that's going to work. And I know that the schools are wrestling with all those issues, whether or not kids are going to go to private schools or, there's a whole litany of talk out there about where they're headed. I know it's not they've got their hands full trying to wrestle with what they got there,
It's not just a town level, it's a state, state and countrywide, like a lot of stuff that you see on social media is like crossing over and things like that. So I'm just trying to wondering where we're going to end up with more or less
Yeah, I know that the city leaders are just trying to get a commitment as to, is the governor going to commit to paying those funds that she, put out there, and we're getting a better indication that that commitment may be coming. So,
That'd be good.
Jay, Tom had his hand up a few
Oh,
minutes ago
I'm sorry,
for a
Tom.
while.
I'm okay. Yeah, I'm just assuming that we're going to have two FTRs, so I doubled the number.
okay.
Okay.
Joe?
If I understood correctly, isn't the legislature going back now? Aren't they starting on the budget?
No,
Chris?
they're not gonna start the budget until, well, there'll be some guidance coming through. There'll be a lot of the submissions, but I don't think they're gonna come in to vote on the budget till mid-August.
Okay, because I heard they were going back and they had a few pieces of legislation they were working on.
They are working on legislation, and they are working on the formulary on how to put the budget together. They're trying to get the guidance pieces put together, which is kind of what I knew was gonna happen. We'd be going along while mirroring kind of while they're putting their guidance together. I would just like to see it in writing before we commit to doing it. It's much better when we kind of know the roadmap that they've already had written out for them.
I'm looking at, they were saying that, I guess, they don't even know basically what's going on with businesses, and I guess they don't have a total account because the courts have been closed and, bankruptcies are stacking up. And that all leads to a lot of revenue loss from the state for licensing different things,
Yep.
income taxes and the whole 9 yards. But, I'm hearing worst case scenario, we're looking at $1 billion hole in the state budget.
So RIPEC put out a concept paper based on the May revenue estimating conference. Obviously, the numbers weren't that great, but they were actually a little bit better than what was originally forecasted. And when I say a little bit better, we're talking, between $550 million projection loss to a $525 million loss. I mean, it's not that great of news, but it's better than where they originally had. But it's
Yeah.
still bad news overall.
Well, my only point being is like this, our budget, the state's budget, I mean, so much of it is fixed cost. It's very high with all the Medicaid money and things too, but that's all, in and out. The state really doesn't have a lot of areas to cut, kind of like the town. I mean, other than laying off half their staff, but there's a lot of things that necessary functions. So they can only lay off so many people. It's like us. I don't know how they're going to make all these commitments. So, I heard these rosy pictures. Oh yeah, the governor's going to do it. She doesn't want to look bad. She's going to put it on the legislature to make the cut. So we need to be very cautious because this state is really hurting.
I'm not disagreeing. I think what we just got through doing, that drill was, I'm dreading the news from Tom after he puts it all together, that if we still have to continue going, these are not easy discussions. And like I said, for anybody who's watching what we're doing here, and I agree with every comment that everybody has said about, being on your committee. These are tough times, and, we are still trying to provide the basic amount of services at a reasonable rate, and try to do it with some semblance of decency and fairness. Without, I know I made some comments last week that, we're taken totally somewhat out of context, and they, when you go through these processes where you make cut, and you're trying to add a little levity sometimes, and it was probably inappropriate, but we get to that point where we get punch drunk over trying to get these things done. I agree with Mike, some of the things he's saying about public service, trash, those kind of things. They're really, really hard decisions to make. So
part of our danger, part of our risk is we make recommendations based on revenue estimates, and they don't happen.
Right.
And we could be stuck with some of these decisions, and then you really have a problem of how you're going to fund them.
Yeah.
Maintenance of ever being one of them.
I just think people should know that you're not taking these decisions or these discussions cavalierly. You're not taking them, they're very, very difficult, issues to do. So these last two meetings have been very difficult to do. And we're still going to process our way through this to get to where we need to be to represent something on behalf of the taxpayers. It is what it is. It's,
Oh, look, guys,
Honestly-
it's after 9 o'clock. It's getting late.
But Jay, I have one quick question on what we're doing. The cuts of employees, if we hope we don't have to do them, but if we do, some of them can be rehired later. You know what I'm saying? And when the time comes, any employee that is like a resource officer, that could come back pretty quickly and, if not earlier than next year. I just
It
want
can if they're
people to
available.
know the big picture, you know what I'm saying is,
so I will let you know that the position cuts that I did make, there are no bodies in them. They are vacant positions.
right.
We're just not refilling them.
But we would, obviously, I would love to have them all refilled.
Whereas with the schools, the cuts that we're proposing by level funding will get rid of many jobs.
You're absolutely right.
Well,
No
that's-
doubt.
that has to
Not-
happen.
And those are jobs that people already had. They're not vacant positions.
Yep.
They had already agreed prior to COVID to make a certain amount of cuts to get to where they needed to operate. And those positions are being eliminated. I mean, we can look back at their original slides and those are people that are being placed on unemployment.
It's time to be reminded that we've doubled the school budget in 12 years or something close to that, and we have fewer students, and everybody needs to learn to do the best they can with the money available. It's
So,
just
Jay,
not
I
a
think
perfect world. Jen, I want the same thing you do, but it's not perfect.
No, you don't. No, you don't. No,
Yes, I
you
do.
don't.
Okay, guys, let's not get into this.
Is that a motion to adjourn?
No, there isn't. So we're gonna have
Okay.
are we agreed to have a meeting on the 23rd?
Yes.
Okay, I'll schedule one.
Are we going to have it? Are we going to start at 6 and have the school committee or whoever join us, or are we going to wait for them?
No, let's start at 6, please.
Yes.
Can I just
Brenda?
make a suggestion too? If we start at 6, could maybe we start with Tom's spreadsheet, see where we're at
That's
and
great.
have a
I'm-
very good idea of what we're working with?
I just want to know what you guys want.
Hey, Jay, before we adjourn, do you want me to pop up what Dr. Sanquioni sent me today? I think he wanted me to share it in anticipation for the meeting. But if you want, you can send it out as an email and people can look at it on their own.
Can you do that?
I could do that, but if someone doesn't have PowerPoint, they might not be able to, but I could probably try to screenshot it and somehow get it to them.
Why don't you do that?
Send it
It's
To me
getting
and I can
late.
make it.
People are getting fuzzy. Huh?
Okay. I'm gonna
Brendan?
send it to Brendan and then Brendan can maybe wiggle with it and send it out to everyone. If that's Brendan is offering to do so, it's very nice of him.
I'm probably the only one who won't be able to figure it out.
So Mike, can you, could email it to me? I can, it's not that long, right? It's a couple of pages.
Yeah,
Two or
it's like 2 or 3 pages, not long.
I'll print it out.
Four flashes of PowerPoint, right?
Chris
I
can do
email
it.
that, and Jay can send out to the staff. To your,
Okay, I'll send it right now.
okay.
And can Tom send out the spreadsheet with the updates?
Yeah, I'd like to talk to Chris offline just to go through and double check my numbers.
Well, you can
That's
send that
fine,
along.
that's fine, but sometime before next week so we
Yeah.
can look at, I like to look at it
Yeah.
before we're actually sitting here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm
Thank you.
sure he'll
It was-
do
it
that
was
for
helpful.
us.
It was helpful this week like that.
Okay, anybody got anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
Okay, we got a
second.
motion, we got a second. All those in favor? Tom Hamilton, what time did you join